To Capture a Rogue. Logan's Legends, a Revelry's Tempest novel. Written by K.J. Jackson. Narrated by Anais Anara Chase. Chapter 1. Men of uncommon valour, each with a past to deny. Peerless, formidable, coveted. One man to unite them. This band of guards unlike any other. These are Logan's men. London, England, September 1814. The blade embedded into the wood next to his temple wasn't his first clue, but it did verify the fact that Nicolina was ready to kill him. And this time, she might very well do the job. "You're alive, you bloody bastard!" Her left fist flew hard into his chest, pinning him to the stable wall as her right hand shifted position on the black leather hilt of the blade next to his head. His wife always had been fire, uncontrollable, demanding, explosive. But the blade was new, or at the very least she had never come this close to severing his ear. Nicolina had always been good with the blade, too good thanks to that misguided uncle of hers. Alive! The one word seethed long from her full lips as she yanked the dagger from the wood. Her shoulders shifted back, her arm ready to strike again. Gareth caught her wrist high in the air, halfway to contact. She could attack him once in an ambush out of the black of night, but not twice. Twice he would not let slide. His fingers around her wrist tightened, choking until she squealed. Her left fist on his chest started to pound into his flesh. "Blast it, Nick." His muttered words sent her into a flurry of fury, a demon wildcat bent on pummeling him into the depths of hell. Her left fist and the tips of her boots flew in a whirlwind, bent on punishing. He shook her captured arm, squeezing harder until the dagger popped, slipping from her fingers. He twisted her wrist into submission, forcing it behind her back as he spun her, his free hand wrapping around her waist. Trapped, she screeched, her legs flailing as he lifted her from the ground. Her body clamped to his. He carried her to a stall at the back of the stable, grabbing several lengths of leather reins on the way. Within seconds, against her twisting and kicking, he managed to tie her wrists onto the rails of a wooden chair behind her back. Her body bucked against the seat of the chair, and he rounded on her. His hands clamped onto her shoulders, and he set his weight to bear down onto her. "Cease, Nick." Still a wildcat, she jerked to the left under his weight, tilting the chair to the side, almost making it tip over. He caught her mid-fall and righted the chair, then dug his fingertips into the muscles in her shoulders. "Damn it, Nick, cease. He bloody well just almost cut off my ear." Her body stilled, even as her chest heaved with rapid breaths. She shook her head, trying to clear wild locks of blonde hair that had escaped her bonnet from in front of her eyes. She looked up, her green eyes piercing him. "If I had wanted to take your ear, Gareth, I would already be holding the bloody stump of it." "What the hell are you doing here, Nick?" "What the hell am I doing here?" A forced cackle screeched through her teeth. "What in the hell are you doing here, Gareth? What in the hell are you doing alive? What in the hell business do you have at a gaming hall? What in the hell are you doing walking around alive, healthy, whistling? Whistling, damn it! Bloody well whistling! I heard you come through the gardens whistling. Well, I think you are dead for a year. Not just any death. A cold, painful, vile death. Your body lost, rotting in some random dirty field on the continent. And you are whistling? Nick. What, Gareth? What? There is no excuse. None. You are alive and you didn't come home. You are dead. Dead. And then suddenly, you are here. Gareth's head dropped forward, his eyes closing. He willed a breath deep into his lungs. Peeling his fingers upward and off of her shoulders, he took a step backward, took a step away. He had to breathe air that was not hers, air that wouldn't consume him. Space that wouldn't consume him. Fire that wouldn't consume him. He wasn't ready. He hadn't been able to even bear the thought of seeing her, of setting himself in front of her once more, not with the shame. And then this, her attacking him out of the blind. His forehead lifted, his eyes pinning her. She hadn't moved, hadn't twitched, she just stared at him, each breath she took sending a fresh tremble through her body. Anger. Anger consuming her. You are in no state to listen to me right now, Nick. Untie me! You are not calm enough to untie. Her body convulsed, her arms trying to break free from the leather binding them to the chair. Untie me this instant, you treacherous, monstrous arse! He folded his arms across his chest. My point. You don't get to have a point, Gareth. Her body continued to twist, yanking on the knots holding her down, and the small black bonnet on her head slipped to the side and fell down onto her shoulder. You are bloody well alive, so you don't get a point. You don't get a word. You don't get anything. He exhaled a long breath, striving for control, striving to reconcile the fact in his mind that his wife had randomly appeared in London, found him, and was sitting before him. Plotting his quick and painful death, no doubt. But here, with her green eyes shooting daggers at him. What do you want of me, Nick? Her head snapped back, her body stilling. What do I want? A coarse chuckle left her as her look went upward to the stable roof, her head shaking. Nothing, Gareth. Absolutely nothing. You attacked me, Nick. Your blade nearly impaling my forehead, and you want nothing from me. Her gaze dropped to skewer him. I strike that. I do want something from you, Gareth. I want you, my husband, to know that I am well aware of the fact that you are alive. Then you have succeeded on that score, Nick. He inclined his head to her. Good eve. He spun and strode out of the stables without a backward glance. Chapter 2. They had stayed too long at the park. Why did she always fall prey to the precious wide eyes of her charges? How could she sink a blade into a wall not even an inch from her husband's temple, yet not say no to a 6-year-old girl and 7-year-old boy with merriment on their minds? If they had just left Hyde Park in time, ignored the hundreds of round rocks that begged to be thrown into the Serpentine, they would have been home at dusk, changing for bedtime, not walking along Brook Street under the waning daylight in what she hoped would be a shortcut home to Lord Samport's residence. The candles wouldn't have suddenly been lit in the front window of that tall, stately townhouse on Brook Street, drawing her attention to the facade. Her eyes wouldn't have fallen on the shoulders of the man standing on the middle step of the stone stairs leading into that townhouse. Shoulders that were oddly, distantly familiar. Her gaze wouldn't have been inexplicably drawn to the head attached to the shoulders, searching for a profile. If not for those blasted rocks at the water's edge, she wouldn't have seen the man on those stairs turn, wouldn't have seen it was her long-dead husband standing there, standing tall and clean and virile and proud, alive, in the middle of London. He had given one sweeping glance out into the street, yet his look ventured nowhere near her and the children, and then he had disappeared into the townhouse. The children hadn't given her a moment to pause or let her feet slow as they tugged her forward, hungry for leftover Banbury cake before they slept. Her husband. Alive. Alive and in London, a 15-minute stroll away. By the time they had arrived back to Lord Samport's townhouse, Nicolina's fingers were itching, near to shaking in their need to unwrap the carefully concealed bundle hidden in the bottom of her satchel in her room. She had hurried the children through eating and gotten them to bed, not waiting nearly long enough for them to fall asleep before she rushed to her room. Digging free the bundle of felt from her satchel, she unfurled it as quietly as she could, attempting to keep the clinking of blade against blade to a minimum. Plucking her favourite dagger from her cache of knives, she then slipped out the back of Lord Samport's home and into the night, hustling along the edges of the streets. The black she had worn for the last 2 years allowed her to sink into the shadows, and she had found herself a shrouded spot across the street from the townhouse on Brook Street, tucked tight along the base of a curved marble staircase to an empty house. The perfect spot to watch. And she had waited, and stewed, and waited. And ire she couldn't control began to simmer. And then she waited longer. Waited until her ire splintered, turning into a rage born out of the desecration of steadfast love. He was alive. Her husband. The man she had counted on most in the world. The man she would have done anything for. The man that had mastered her soul so completely he had become a very part of her and her him. The man that had given his life for the crown. The man she had grieved so savagely for, she had almost died from her broken heart gripping her with such ferocity she could not lift spoon to mouth. Could not roll over in bed. Could not move until she had wasted away almost to the grave. And he had been alive the whole time. Alive and here in London. In London, carousing in a gaming house of all things. It had taken half the night before Nicolina had determined that the townhouse was functioning as a gaming house, thanks to the snippets of conversations from the patrons arriving and going into the house. The closed front curtains were gauzy enough to let light out, but they hid enough that she'd been able to see very little of the activities inside. Half the night had wasted away and she had not seen Gareth. So she had moved to the rear mews to see if she could get any closer. She hadn't even slipped halfway down the alley toward the townhouse when she had heard the whistling. Whistling she had recognized instantly. Whistling she had heard 1,000 times over. Whistling that haunted her sleep. Whistling light and airy. That was the moment her rage had exploded. That was the moment she had lost all rational thought in her head. Red. Only red, flashing in her mind, in her eyes. Red that still blinded her vision. Nicolina twisted her arms behind her, the leather cutting into the skin on her wrists. And now that bastard husband of hers had left her tied there, tied to a blasted chair. A horse snorted in the stall next to her. Tied to a bloody chair in a horse stall of all places. The husband she had waited on for 2 years. 2 horrific years of waiting for a crisp, sealed missive from the Crown, regretfully informing her of her husband's death. 2 years of wondering and praying and pleading with forces unknown for him to be well, for him to survive. The missive had never appeared, but after 2 years the money he sent every month had stopped. And that was as sure a sign as any that Boney's forces had felled him. Then the war ended, and her last flicker of hope died. Her chest tightened, cutting her breath as the last year of mourning washed over her, of having to wake every day, drifting from dreams where he was alive into reality where he was not. Every morning having to remind herself that he was no longer in the world, to have to accept that fact again and again and again. Yet he was alive. He had been this whole time, and he had not come for her. That cruel fact sank into her chest, defeating her to her core. He had not come. Her arms went limp and her head dropped forward, tears filling her eyes. Tears that flowed so furiously they sopped the lap of her black muslin dress within a minute, the wetness seeping down through her chemise to chill the top of her thighs. Her shoulders shook, the angle they were held back by her bound wrists behind her, the only thing holding her from curling forward into bone-crushing sobs. "Lady Vanderstaff does not allow whores on the premises," Even muted through the blood pumping in her ears, the rumble of the deep baritone voice made her head jerk up. Her eyes searched the stable around her as she rapidly blinked to clear the tears. Craning her neck to the side, she spotted a man turning into the stall and approaching her. Nicolina's forehead scrunched, her head shaking. Horror. Her tears had shrunken her voice to a whisper. Prostitutes. 3 long strides into the stall and the man stopped in front of her. There are plenty of streets around here where you can ply your wares. This street, this alley, is not available to you. She squinted, her tears finally tapering enough to see him clearly, and she looked up at his imposing form. The devil. The man had to be the handsomest male to have ever walked the earth. His face chiseled, smooth marble with strength in every line. Dark hair cut short. Piercing eyes. Even in the dim light of the stable, his eyes were unsettling. Haunting. Nicolina hadn't appreciated another man's looks since Gareth had started courting her 5 years ago. They had married 3 months before he left for war, and her eye had never wandered, never in all the years. But this man's face demanded the attention, demanded appreciation. She stared up at him, her mouth slightly agape. You will only get one warning. His perfect lips moved, his baritone the thickest golden honey. We keep this street clean. You are not welcome here. Her head snapped back at his most definite threat, her look dropping to the front of his black waistcoat. Not welcome here. She looked up, meeting his dark silver eyes. Black. They almost looked black with only the flickering light of the lantern hanging on the wall of the stall. The menace in them stole her voice for a long second. Then she realized how he was looking at her. He was looking at her like she had no right. No right to be there. No right to sully his precious building with her foul presence. She had heard him say prostitute, but it hadn't registered in her mind he was actually calling her a harlot. But there was no mistaking it. He was looking at her like a whore. Her hackles spiked. You think I'm a prostitute? He folded his arms across his chest and flicked his head toward the chair. You're tied with a leather strap to a chair in the back stall of Lady Vanderstar's stable. Your dress is soiled wet. I am to think otherwise. She twisted, trying to rip her wrists free from the leather bindings. Damn Gareth and his damn knots. I am no such thing, sir. I am a governess for a very prominent lord. And you are tied like a whore to a chair. Why? Her mouth clamped shut, a heated flush quickly filling her face. She did look like a whore. A discarded harlot. She exhaled the indignation filling her lungs and set her look on the top black button of his waistcoat. I came to your establishment to speak to a gentleman that was here on the premises, and this is how the conversation ended. Can you please untie me? None of the gentlemen inside would tie an innocent woman to a chair and then abandon her amongst the horses. Her gaze snapped up to his face. This one did. Who is it? All of our patrons know the rules, and it appears as if I have business to attend to with one of our customers. Her mouth clamped shut, her lips pulling inward. The instant instinct to protect Gareth from this man manifested in her gut. Instinct she silently scolded herself for. The man lifted one finger from the fold of his arms to point at her. You can tell me, and I can untie you, or I can leave you as you are for the next lecherous gentleman to happen upon you. Nicolina's eyes went wide. He wouldn't. The man nodded, silently countering her disbelief. His stone-cut face offered no mercy to her plight. Her eyes drifted downward, humiliation washing over her. My husband. Your husband? His left brow arched. A name, miss. A name or I leave. She hissed an exhale. Damn it. Let her husband have to deal with this man. He deserved it. Gareth Callison. His head tilted down, the arch in his left brow reaching even higher. Captain Callison. She met his eyes. That man is no captain. Not to me. The man's arms unfolded, and he stepped around Nicolina to the back of the chair. His voice softened considerably as his fingers worked the leather knot. I was not aware that Callison had a wife. Yes, well, Gareth appears to have forgotten that fact as well. A grunt in reply, and the man stood behind her as the leather fell from her wrists, freeing her. I apologize. I meant no offense as to your state here in the stable. Thankful he stayed behind her, Nicolina took a long moment to compose her body before pushing herself to standing. She spun to the man as she brushed down on her wet skirt, her voice coolly polite. You are unaware. I must take no offense. I do not know what I would have assumed had I walked into a stall and seen me. It is kind of you. Please tell me, sir, Mr. Logan Lippenstein. Mr. Lippenstein, you mentioned that Lady Vanderstyle owns this home, yet I was under the impression it was... Well, what type of establishment is it? His perfectly carved left eyebrow cocked. The Revelry's Tempest? It is a gaming house owned by Lady Vanderstyle. She nodded at his quick honesty. Thank you. I did not wish to mistake what I discerned of the place. I was just surprised it was owned by a woman. He glanced about the stall, seemingly unsure how to proceed, the slightest crack in his stone facade. I do not suppose I should gather your husband at this point. No, please do not. Then I will have a carriage brought around to deliver you safely home. No, it is not necessary. I have my blade and it is a short walk. Nicolina turned from him and stepped outside the stall, kicking aside hay as she searched the floor of the stable for a glint of steel. The more hay she shuffled through in the spot where she had dropped her dagger, the less she found. She bent over, rummaging through the straw with her fingers. Did you lose something? The man had stepped up behind her, looking over her shoulder. Her fingers desperately sifting through the dirt of the ground, Nicolina swore under her breath. That bastard husband of hers had stolen her blade from her, when Gareth knew exactly what that dagger meant to her. She stood, her hands planting on her hips as she stared at the ground in the dim light. I did. Several things, it appears, my dignity being one of them. She shook her head without looking at Mr. Lippenstein. Thank you for untying me. Nicolina turned, walking down the length of the stable and out into the dark alleyway. The man didn't follow, thank the heavens. She couldn't take another whit of humiliation. Chapter 3. Gareth glanced down at the dagger he had just pulled from his pocket. Even though he stood in the shadows, the low flickering light of a lantern hanging from the front of a carriage house to his left flashed off the steel of the blade. His palm wrapped around the handle, the weight of the knife perfectly balanced, though light, in his hand. Crafted specifically for a petite grasp, not his meaty fingers. Crafted for Nicolina when she was just 16. The leather knot at the butt end of the handle had frayed, and he unfurled the black leather strapping slowly, carefully, exposing the swirled diamonds and rubies embedded in the onyx handle. Uncle Felix. It had been years since he had seen the blade, and his memory had not done the dagger justice. Nicolina's uncle had always crafted the most exquisite blades. He had been an artisan of the first order, and his talent had allowed him to establish enough wealth to afford the best education for his niece and nephews. Gareth's thumb ran across the largest embedded ruby at the edge of the crossguard. The dagger had been a bribe of sorts to get Nicolina to go back to finish her last year at the private seminary. Uncle Felix had wanted the education for her, and she had wanted nothing more than to stay in Berkshire and spend her days at the foundry. The dagger was a promise that she would lose nothing at school. that her instruction in the finer arts of swordplay would not cease. For not only was Uncle Felix a master craftsman, he was also an accomplished swordsman, and had instructed Nicolina in the proper use of all blades, just as he had his nephews. Slightly misguided, Uncle Felix had no children of his own, and had inherited Nicolina and her brothers to raise when Nicolina was 6 and her brothers were 5 and 7. Her uncle had trained the boys, of course, and he had thought it a novelty to train Nicolina just the same, especially because she was so small and light. Gareth had thought the same. Her skill and cunning with the steel had been a novelty, until the first time he had angered Nicolina beyond all measure while they were sparring, and she had sliced his arm in the ensuing fight. Her smallness in no way matched her spirit, not by far. A smile at the long-past memory slid onto his lips. Gareth looked up at the rear of the building in front of him. The candlelight that had been lit in the right corner window on the 4th level of the home was now extinguished. Full darkness in the townhouse. A grand, spacious townhouse that swallowed half of the block. Its brick exterior was flawless, stately, intended to intimidate and impress. So what the hell was his wife doing in it? He swallowed back a surge of rage. His eyes dropping, he quickly rewrapped the leather strapping tight around the handle of the blade, hiding the jewels, and then tied it off. He slipped the dagger into his pocket, moving forward through the shadows of the mews. He had a job to do. Chapter 4. The bright light hit her, breaking through her sleep to pull her from her dreams. Flat on her stomach, she resisted, burying her head into the pillow, wanting sleep, 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 and more sleep. But if daylight was shining into her room, then it had surely already awoken her charges, and they would be bounding into her bedroom in no time. Nicolina's eyes flickered open, her head turning to the side. Her blade. Inches from her face, her lost dagger sitting on the side table next to the bed. Gareth. How in the blasted hell had he gotten into her room, into the townhouse? How had he found her to begin with? She squinted. The black leather had been rewrapped, the binding evenly lapped along the handle of the blade and ending in a tight knot at the bottom. Not like she wrapped it, haphazard and uneven. Just like her imperious husband to mess with her belongings. The heavy pit in her stomach expanded, hardening into a rock that became so unbearable she had to roll over onto her back. She kept her eyes on the dagger. The silver shine of the blade contrasted with the dark mahogany of the table. Her husband. Not dead. Alive. She braced herself for a moment, teasing out reality from her dreams. Like she had done every day, every morning for the last year. She would wake, and she would have to remember her husband was dead. Not alive as he was in her dreams. Dead. Every morning she had to go through the shock, her chest clenching as she accepted reality. Except this morning he was alive. He had been this whole time. She still couldn't quite grasp the fact. The reality that she had seen him, touched him, talked to him, nearly killed him. Her eyes closed. She had known the speed and direction of her blade when she had thrust it at his head, but for one instant she had truly wanted to kill him. Kill him for being alive. Kill him for hiding from her. Kill him for abandoning her. She had spent the last year in widow's weeds, spent the last year in the darkest grief, and he was alive. The bastard. After the initial shock of seeing him, it hadn't taken Nicolina but minutes to realize that this reality was worse. For he hadn't died. He had abandoned her, willingly abandoned her. Her heart clenched, her chest filling with stones. "Mrs. Callie! Mrs. Callie! Mrs. Callie!" Lillian's softly sweet voice preceded her into Nicolina's room. Nicolina lifted her head and patted the bed next to her. Still in her nightgown, the little girl's bare feet thudded across the floorboards as she scurried to the bed and jumped onto the side, snuggling under the covers Nicolina had lifted for her. Lillian wiggled until she was half splayed on top of Nicolina and leeching all the warmth from the cocoon of the covers. Nicolina wrapped her left arm around the girl's torso. "Your legs are as cold as icicles." Lillian giggled. "Is your brother awake?" "No, Mrs. Kelly, and I shook him and shook him." "And that did not wake him?" "He grumbled at me and pushed me." "Then he must be tired, and we shall let him sleep." "But I am tired too, Mrs. Kelly." "Then what are you doing out of bed?" Lillian shrugged and tucked her head onto the nook between Nicolina's shoulder and chest. Within a minute, the girl's soft breaths went deep and even, sleep overtaking her. Nicolina couldn't fault her for not staying in bed. Just like Lillian, Nicolina was 6 when her mother died. Her protected world had been upended by a bloody cough that took her mother within days. All Nicolina wanted in those days was to find a warm, safe place to sleep, for someone to hold her, comfort her. But there was no such thing at her uncle's home. While her uncle was kind, he also had a wild mind and knew nothing of raising a 6-year-old girl. And Nicolina's older brother had always, at best, disregarded her as a thorn in his side. Her little brother was her only solace in those days, even though it was she that had to hold him, comfort him, dry his tears, all things she coveted for herself. Nicolina tightened her hold on Lillian. This she could give the little girl, a safe place to sleep. What she would have given for that very thing when she was that age. Instead, she had gotten accustomed to a cold bed, until she had met Gareth. She was 15 when he had come to apprentice with her uncle, and her world had been upended once more. He had always been the warmth she had craved, a balm to her scarred heart. And then the war had invaded their lives, and her warm bed had turned cold again. The thought of her husband sent surges of blood speeding through her veins, sending her fingers to tingling, her rage building. Gareth had abandoned her. Abandoned her. Just when her renewed fury started to simmer out of control, Lillian sighed in her sleep, nuzzling deeper into the burrow Nicolina's arm provided. The bitterness quelled. It was hard to be irate when a sweet little girl was curled up along her side. She needed that, needed to think straight without rage blinding her mind. Gareth was alive, and he had dared to be skulking about in her room in the middle of the night, which meant he didn't want to see her again, didn't want to acknowledge that he had abandoned his wife. But he would not remove himself so easily from the destruction he had caused. That she would not allow. She had to determine her next move. Hopefully it would not be to kill the bastard. Nicolina watched the children run ahead of her into the breakfast room, and then turned her attention to Lord Samport. He stood in the hallway, the sunken swaths under his eyes darkened almost to blackness. Nicolina wondered if her employer ever managed to sleep. His wife only dead for 3 months, Nicolina recognized the grief he was ensnared within, yet admirably he still went forth with his days. "My lord." She nudged his attention back onto her, as he had been the one to halt her in the hallway. It took a full second for his heavy eyes to find and focus upon her. "Mrs. Callison, my wife's sister sent word she will be taking the children today. She intends to bring them to see the animals at the Tower Menagerie. That will be delightful for them, my lord. The children do love Lady Gorton, as they have remarked those very words time and again." Nicolina forced enthusiasm into the smile on her face. While the children adored their aunt, Nicolina had come to despise Lady Gorton's husband. The man had propositioned Nicolina more than once, and with his wife not but 7 steps away. She had politely dissuaded him every time, but that hadn't stopped his hands and his body from brushing quite intently against her breasts and backside, more times than she had cared to count. Nicolina silently prayed she would not have to accompany Lady Gorton and risk another encounter with her husband. Yes, they do adore their aunt. Lady Gorton is so very much like... His voice trailed, choking off. He cleared his throat. So you are excused for the day. Nicolina nodded as she silently exhaled a relieved sigh. What will you do with the day? Read? The words came from his lips woodenly, doing nothing more than fulfilling customary politeness. The library here is not as extensive as the one at Mount Black, but it should have sufficient choice. Her eyes darted about. What would she do with the day? She could think of only one thing, and she was not about to share her plans with Lord Samport. Possibly. I do have a friend from Berkshire that is currently in London, and I may call on her. Very good. Lord Samport gave her a small nod and moved down the hall. Nicolina's fingers tapped along the folds of her skirt. She still had no idea what was appropriate in this situation. It wasn't a common occurrence that one discovered she had been abandoned by her husband. But Nicolina recognized an opportunity when she saw it, and a free day was an opportunity. Now she just had to find her bastard husband. Chapter 5. The fishmonger was the key. Nicolina had loitered about the front of the townhouse on Brook Street for a half-hour before the fishmonger stopped his cart just past her feet. Thank the heavens, as she was chilled from the cool fall mist that had set in after a rare morning of clear skies. The fishmonger balanced a basket of slippery whitebait against his chest as he stepped past the gate and down the stairs to the small area courtyard outside the servants' entrance of the townhouse. He shifted the basket in his arms and then banged on the rough planks of the weathered door. A rotund woman with streaked grey hairs escaping from below her white cap opened the door. Instant bartering began. The woman at the door was the resident cook. Nicolina smiled to herself. Finally a way forward after aimlessly staring at the stubbornly quiet building. Gaming houses had very little activity about them in the late morning hours. Nicolina hovered alongside the wrought iron fence, ready to pounce the second the fishmonger concluded his deal. The man was a good haggler. The cook was better. Deal struck, he emptied his basket and trudged up the stairs, slightly defeated. "Pardon, Mum," Nicolina called down the tight staircase as she quickly descended the steep steps. "Pardon, Mum." Pulling the door closed, the cook stopped just before the latch clicked. She poked her head out past the door. "We've no work, lass." Stern but kindly, the cook dismissed Nicolina before she could get another word in. Nicolina jumped down over the last 3 stairs and planted herself in front of the door, the tip of her right boot scooting forward to wedge between the door and frame if necessary. "Please, Mum, I do not come for work or to sell you anything. I just have a question." The woman's eyebrows lifted. "Ask it quick then, lass." "Last night there was a tall man here at this establishment. I forgot his name." "There be lots of tall men round here, lass." Nicolina slipped the toe of her boot against the door. "Yes, but this one was embarrassingly handsome. Dark hair, grey eyes." The cook's forehead tipped forward, her brown eyes quickly running up and down Nicolina. "Embarrassingly, you say?" "Yes." A slight smirk lifted one of her plump cheeks. "That be Logan, but I be doing ye courtesy by telling ye, lass, he don't partake in what ye be desiring." "What?" Nicolina's head tilted to the side. The smirk on the cook's face spread full across her lips. Realization hit Nicolina. Did she always look like a hussy? She glanced down. Black dress, black cloak clasped tight above her bosom. She shook her head, looking to the woman. "No, that is not why I am here. I just have to ask him, Logan, a question. It is about one of the patrons of your establishment." The cook opened the door a touch wider and leaned on the frame of the doorway. "One of our patrons, eh?" "Yes, a man in the stable last night." The woman crossed her arms over the expanse of her flour-dusted apron. "Our patrons don't go into the mews. Maybe ye be looking for one of Logan's men."
Logan's men.
Who are they?
The guards of the Revelry's Tempest, lass.
Guards? But she had seen Gareth go in through the front door of this gaming house, seen him go in to gamble. He had said nothing of working here, not that she had given him a chance to say anything. She blinked hard. If Mr. Callison is one of them, then yes, that is who I am looking for. Mr.
He be looking for the captain. Aye, he's here. Back in the mews last I seen his direction.
She motioned her head backward. Thank you. Nicolina turned and rushed up the metal steps. She stopped midway to street level and turned back to the cook. Please tell me, how long has Mr. Callison been a guard here? The cook's head swayed back and forth as she seemingly counted in her head.
Round about a year, I imagine. He be one of the first Logan brought on. He be a legend, that one. Course they all be.
Again, thank you. Nicolina turned to move up the remaining steps.
Just so you know, the captain not be partaking in what ye be desiring either, lass.
The cook's words followed Nicolina up the stairs. The cook chuckled and clicked the door shut just as Nicolina rounded the corner of the townhouse. How did you get in there? Gareth's movement froze in place, his back to Nicolina. She had found him halfway down the length of the stable, hanging a curved quillen dagger in a large shallow cabinet that possessed an impressive array of steel blades of all lengths. His hand stopped in mid-air as his shoulders tensed. Without a coat on, his waistcoat and white linen shirt were not enough to disguise the motion. Where? His one word came slowly, and only after a long breath had passed. They both knew what Nicolina referred to, and she knew Gareth's one-word reply was only uttered to purchase another moment to brace himself. She wasn't about to allot him the smallest second. My room, Gareth. Silently, his arms spread wide to grasp the edges of the two open doors of the cabinet, and he closed them in front of him, removing the blades from sight. Nicolina scanned the wall of the stable. Not a person would think there was anything but grooming brushes and farrier tools in the cabinet. That was her uncle's trick. Always hide the most expensive creations in the most common of cabinets and trunks. Under the blankets. In the butter jar. Just what exactly was her husband's business in this place? A guard she understood, but that cabinet held much more steel than a gaming house with this address should rightly require. Her chin lifted up, her eyes centering on the back of his head, staring at the individual dark brown strands. So dark his hair was almost black until the sun hit it. The tip of his head tilted slowly downward. Just forget you ever saw me, Nick. Just walk away. His voice was rough gravel, every word formed only by the grace of several fortifying breaths. For a moment, his words hung in the air heavy, before they hit her with all the intended weight. The heel of her boot slipped backward, dragging through the shards of hay. Backward a step. Then two. The force of his utterance striking her just as harshly as if he had slapped her. Dust from the movement of her feet swirled upward, stirring the air in front of her. He had abandoned her. And he wanted it to stay that way. What should have sent fury into her bones twisted, instead stealing every trace of her energy and forcing exhausted capitulation. Walk away. She should. He didn't want her, so there was nothing to stay for. Nicolina tried to force her leg to move, to lift her foot and walk away. But nothing. She couldn't move from the spot, couldn't turn from him. Humiliation sank into her chest as she realized there was no other course for her, not at the moment. She opened her mouth, hating the sound of her own voice. You are my husband, Gareth. I cannot walk away. I cannot pretend I am not married. For the longest seconds she stood, staring at his back, willing him to turn, to speak, to tell her this was all a misunderstanding. He would never leave her, never abandon her, never let her go. Only silence. Only stillness.
only particles of dust floating in the air between them. Abruptly he spun to her, so fast and unexpected she jumped another step backward and bumped into the front half wall of an empty stall. His dark brown eyes met hers, instantly searing into her. It was not hard. The house was quiet, and you've always slept like the dead, Nick. What? She stared at him, taking him in like she hadn't been able to last night in the low light. His brown hair was cut short, practical, just as he had trimmed it before leaving for war. Creases marred the length of his forehead, and she wasn't sure if they were permanent or because her presence vexed him. A scar the width of her thumb cut along his left cheekbone. Another one sat just between his eyebrow and right temple, but the straight line of his nose was still interrupted by the slight bump she had caused when the hilt of her sword escaped her during a sparring match years ago. That alone had gone untouched. The whole of him older. His shoulders broader, stronger. The expanse of his chest wide, stretching against his dark waistcoat and linen shirt. Your dagger, Nick. I knew you would want your dagger back. I know what it means to you. So that is how you return it? You follow me and skulk into my room? I had to. I wasn't about to leave you in here last night with a weapon. Not in the state you were in. She took a long stride forward. The state I was in? You left me tied to a chair, Gareth. She took another step, her arm flinging out to her side and pointing to the back of the stable. In a chair next to the horses. What state did you expect me to be in? His hands came up, his palms facing her. I was hoping to avoid a knife sinking into my back. His eyes flicked to her outstretched hand, landing on her wrist. I know well your proficiency for getting out of knots. She lurched forward, her finger poking into his chest. You had to protect yourself. From me. I am half your size, Gareth. Half. He grabbed her wrist, halting her jabs. And your skill with a blade is triple your size, Nick. We both know that. I have never been a stupid man. I disagree. As your ability to tie knots has improved, your brain has clearly wilted. The clamp around her wrist tightened, his fingers digging into her skin. Pain. Not enough to truly hurt her, but enough to make her pause. Gareth had never harmed her. Never. In all their arguments, never. He wouldn't. But she also never would have believed he would abandon her. The very real possibility that she had no idea who her husband now was flooded her mind. What else was he capable of? She stiffened, her mouth closing as she took a step backward. Or tried to. He wasn't releasing her wrist, wasn't letting her escape. Her eyes darted down to his hand, clamping her wrist. She twisted her arm, yanking, but couldn't free herself. He pulled her a step closer to him, and her boots slipped through the dirt and hay. His right hand came up to her head, and he pushed the small black bonnet she wore back off her hair. It dropped to hang from her neck, its tied ribbons keeping it from dropping to the ground. Without a word, almost reverently, his thumb ran along the ridges of the fat braid that ran aside her temple. His palm dipped to the side of her face as he followed the curve of the weave behind her ear. And for a moment in time she was back to years ago, his touch calming her like it always had. His look dropped from the top of her head to her eyes. Did you remarry, Nick? She looked up at him, trying to quell her suddenly rapid breathing. What? Remarried? No. You are a mistress, then. A mistress? Her voice screeched, her cheeks instantly flaming. Her left hand came up, pushing against his chest as she viciously twisted her captured arm. She freed it from his grasp, ignoring the pain it caused. With a shove that sent her whole body flying backward, she gained space between them and stood, one hand splayed on her chest as she panted. What of you? Of your idiocy, Gareth? His left hand curled into a fist. What are you doing in a house like that, Nick? What are you doing sneaking around in a house like that, Gareth? I had to return your knife." She shook her head, her voice flying out of control. "It does not matter what I'm doing in that house. You told me to leave, so I am leaving." She spun toward the open doorway of the stable and started to walk away. His clamp on her shoulder was immediate, stopping her motion, and her feet almost flew out from under her. It does matter, Nick." His voice dipped low. Dangerous. Craning her neck to the side, she glared up at him. "Did you not see the room I was in?" "It was dark. I could only see your slight lump in the bed." "I am a lump?" "It was all I could see." Her eyes closed as she drew in a seething breath. "Before I tell you, I want to know one thing." "What?" His grip on her shoulder tensed. She opened her eyes to him, her voice in control once more. "Did you pause?" His left eyebrow cocked. "Pause when?" "When you set my dagger on the side table. You were inches from me, Gareth, as close as you are now. Did you pause? Did you stop and look at me?" His lips drew inward. "Nick, did you pause, Gareth, for even one moment?" He exhaled, nodding. "For how long?" "What?" Her eyes narrowed at him. "Did you stare? Did you lean in? Did you smell me? Feel my breath on your face? Or did you glance at me and then turn and run as fast as your coward ass would take you? Blast it, Nick, so help me." She slapped his hand off of her shoulder and stormed away. 3 steps she managed before he grabbed her arm, whipping her around. Spinning on her heel, her words spat out before she even faced him. "I am a governess, Gareth. My friend from boarding school, Lady Ancon, secured me the position." She yanked her arm from his grasp and gained a step backward. "A governess, not a wife, not a whore, a governess. Nothing more." Her hand went down to grip a fistful of her black skirts and lift them clear from tangling about her ankles. "But it is enlightening to understand just what sort of faith you have in my abilities to take care of myself. What sort of faith you have in my character. Maybe it is time to sell my body. Maybe I will pursue those options next. Or at least the only one that is available to me, since I am no longer a widow and cannot remarry." "Nick, stop. Just stop." Her hand flew up between them. "I am doing what you demanded of me, Gareth. I am walking away. I am forgetting." She turned toward the opening of the stable and walked out into the mist that had permeated the day. He didn't stop her. Chapter 6. Nicolina was a governess, and he was an arse. There was no way around that particular fact. He had thought the very worst of her after he saw that townhouse she was in. He had assumed she had traded her body away for a new future, so he deserved every whit of ire she had shot at him in the stable at the Revelry's Tempest. Let her go. It was what he had promised to himself, swore to heaven and hell he would do. Let her go. But in that moment, after she had told him she was a governess, his world had stilled and exploded. A tiny flame deep in his gut had sparked to life. A flame he had extinguished 2 years ago, never to let burn again. Hope. She wasn't a mistress, hadn't remarried, and he saw very clearly the passion still burning in her eyes, felt it pulsating under her skin. She hadn't moved on, hadn't forgotten him. Even if that passion was currently manifesting as hate, it was there, and with Nicolina the difference between hate and love was often a mere breath. Let her go. He should have let her walk away from the Revelry's Tempest without following. At that moment he should have left London for another part of the world, never to chance their paths meeting again. He should have. But instead, there he was, his blasted feet tromping through an expanse of thick grass in Hyde Park, his eyes like a hawk's on the 3 figures 2 furlongs away playing by the water's edge of the Serpentine. He had waited 2 days, 2 agonizing days, convinced, determined he should leave London, but never bolstering the courage to step foot on the docks. 2 days of only one thing in his mind. Nicolina's green eyes filled with fire, her perfect lips curled in disgust at him. Laughter floated along the wind, laughter he recognized. Her lips were smiling now, laughing as she watched the makeshift boat the boy with her had crafted out of 3 large leaves and sent slowly floating out into the pond with a flower for a captain. More laughter. The girl and the boy joined in. Nicolina could make anyone laugh. He'd seen her cheer the dourest, grumpiest old man with nothing but a smile and a wink. For all that he knew he should let her go, her words in the stable wouldn't allow it. That she could take care of herself. Why would she need to take care of herself? Why had she taken on a position as a governess? Where was her older brother? Where was the money Gareth sent monthly? The little girl with dark hair and fat curls grabbed Nicolina's hand and tugged it, pointing to the long stretch of tall grasses on the far side of the pond. Nicolina made her wait, and after the boy put his shoes back on, the 3 of them set out toward the grasses, walking along the water's edge. Perfect. They were finally moving to an area with less people milling about. Within 5 minutes, Gareth had crossed through the swath of trees that lined the opposite side of the water, and had fallen in line to intersect them. Nicolina's attention was solely on the girl and boy running ahead of her. "Mrs. Callison." He said her name loud once he was within earshot. She jumped, her head swiveling until she saw him. Her steps faltered. 1, 2, 3, and then she stopped on the dirt pathway staring at his approach. Not to be slowed, her 2 small charges both halted, running back to her to grab her hands and tug. Nudged into motion, Nicolina's look flitted about, a trapped rabbit looking for escape. But there were still enough people strolling along the path that she couldn't outwardly ignore him, not for the scene she risked if she did. By herself, maybe, but she was here with the children and representing Lord Samport's household, so she wouldn't dare. Instead, she moved off the pathway with the children and pasted a strained smile on her lips as she waited, foot tapping, for Gareth to close the distance to them. He stopped in the grass before them. Before he could say a word, Nicolina squeezed and lifted the hands of her charges. "Lillian, Frederick, this is an acquaintance of mine from when I was young and lived in the countryside, Mr. Leeson." He glanced at her sharply, a bold lie using only the last half of their name. She avoided his glare, looking down at the little girl on her right side, who had taken a slight step backward to hide along Nicolina's skirts. Gareth stifled a sigh and set his attention on the children. "Captain Leeson, actually." The boy's eyes went wide. "A captain? A real captain?" "Yes." Gareth offered an exaggerated nod. "Complete with a gold medal and cross." Young Frederick took a step forward, his fingers dropping from Nicolina's hand. "You must be very brave. Did you fight Boney's forces? Where is your uniform?" Gareth dropped slowly onto his left knee so he was eye level with the boy, ignoring the pain shooting up from his lower leg. "I did, many times, but I do not wear my uniform now. It's only for special occasions." "Was it quite horrible, Captain?" "It was, but I would do anything to protect this land." His eyes lifted to Nicolina. "Anything to protect the innocent people in it." Frederick's eyes went even wider and he nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Captain." Gareth's look jerked down to the boy. Frederick had said the words with such sincere severity it startled Gareth. "How old are you, Frederick?" "I am 7, Captain." "You are curious about the war, about fighting?" Frederick nodded. "I imagine you are. I know I was at your age. Mr. Leeson. Nicolina's sharp voice held a clear warning. Gareth's face softened as he looked at the boy. But I pray that is not for you, not for all boys your age. I hope it is over, that our land is safe and you will never need to even think about the consequences of war. That is why I fought. His eyes drifted up to Nicolina's face. Why my men fought. At his look, her green eyes closed to him, her head turning slightly to the side, offering nothing. But I would fight, Captain, Frederick said. I'm not afraid. Father says honour above all. My father used to say that as well. Gareth's gaze dropped to the boy and he set his hand on Frederick's shoulder, squeezing. And it is true. Honour above all. The hard thing to remember is that honour can come in many forms, not just with a sword and a rifle. Frederick nodded, the same intense solemnity as earlier, removing all traces of boyhood joy from his face. Gareth tousled the boy's hair, and then put his knuckles on the ground, leaning to the side to have his left foot up. He stood, looking back and forth between the two children. You two appear to have a plan brewing over in that field. I did not intend to interrupt. We're looking for newts. Newts? Whatever for? Lillian says I cannot catch one. She caught one and I haven't yet, so I need to. And there are logs and muck for them to hide in. Gareth looked at the little girl still hiding along Nicolina's skirts. You must be quite quick with your hands to catch a newt. A shy smile came to Lillian's lips and she nodded. Well, do not let my presence stop you. Run ahead. Both of the children looked up to Nicolina, pleading with their eyes. She nodded. Just stay within my sight and 5 steps or more from the water. I will be following. Frederick ran around Nicolina and grabbed his sister's hand, and they ran, foregoing the winding pathway and cutting a straight line to the tall grasses. Nicolina stepped back onto the pathway, starting forth without inviting Gareth to join her. Invitation or not, he fell into step alongside his wife. Cunning of you. Her green eyes were trained forward, watching the progress of the children. Approaching me in front of the children and in the park, where I cannot yell at you. I thought it might keep your inevitable ire restrained. I was right. Yet you have sent them out of earshot, and we have yet to part ways. You are more of a fool than I thought if you think to be clear of my ire. He nodded and clasped his hands behind his back. Several steps went by in silence. He glanced down to her left hand, clutching her reticule. Her ring finger was bare. Only a ring of black ribbon encircled her pinky finger. He lied to them, Nick. She glanced at him, her right eyebrow raised. About my name. Her gaze went forward to find the children. I did not want them to question our association. Frederick is astute and painfully polite. He would have immediately inquired if you were my brother or cousin or uncle. I was not prepared to have the conversation with them about how you are my husband and you abandoned me. She had not lied about her anger, and it sat there simmering under each word she spoke. Nick, her eyes remained fixed on the children as she interrupted him. What are you doing here? You were the one that demanded I walk away. So what do you think to accomplish here? He bit his tongue back. He wanted to demand her back into his life, back into his bed. She was his wife, for devil's sake. She shouldn't be taking care of another man's children. But he had no right. No right to her, not after what he had done. But that wasn't going to stop him from trying. Strike that, Gareth. What are you doing in London? You are here working as a guard? No, not even that. Don't tell me that. Tell me why you are alive. Alive! And you left me with nothing. His feet stopped. Nothing. Nick, why did you think I was dead? I've been sending money every month to your brother to give to you. His words made her halt and she spun back to him. What? To Norton? No, she shook her head. He knows you're alive. Impossible. There is no money. He would have told me. He knew that when the money you always said stopped coming, it was the surest indicator you were dead on a battlefield. No money? Her ne'er-do-well brother took it? Gareth shrugged to cover a surge of fury. Well, I'm not dead, Nick, and I never stopped sending funds. Every month, without fail, I send them to your brother with direct instructions they be given to you. Every month? Still? Her face fell, air leaving her in a long exhale that curled her body as realization hit. Norton took the money. No, he couldn't have. Her hand flattened on her stomach as she gasped a breath, and then her head jerked to the side as she looked about to find her charges. It took her a long moment to form words, and her head started to shake. Norton never would have let me think you were dead. Never. He saw what it did to me. Gareth cringed, his chest tightening at the thought of her believing he was dead. The pain it would have caused her. All he had seen in his wife was her current anger, but he had not considered that. What all of this would have done to her. What his death would have done to her. If he knew nothing else, he knew Nicolina had loved him once. That his death would have been devastating. Her look whipped to him, her eyes still fighting the truth of what Gareth had said. He never... No. There has been no money. None. Norton said there was nothing left. That was why I had to take the position as a governess. There was nothing. Gareth's hand flew out, lightly grabbing her arm. Nick, what do you mean there was nothing left? Even without the money I sent, what about your uncle's foundry? Nicolina's eyes closed as her right hand lifted to her forehead, rubbing it. No. No. Norton, what did you do? Her voice had dropped to a whisper, but Gareth heard the words. What the hell did your brother do to the foundry, Nick? Her shoulders lifted as she took a deep breath, then fell as she exhaled it slowly. He said the foundry wasn't making any money. I couldn't believe it, but he said it, and Uncle Felix left it to him to do with what he pleased, so he would not listen to me, would not answer any of my questions. Her hand dropped from her forehead and she looked at Gareth. Her cheeks had turned ashen, the black ribbons of her bonnet stark against her skin. So I talked to the workers and they hadn't been paid in weeks. And then one day no one arrived at work. It was empty of everyone. Then a week later everyone came to work again. They said they had been paid. But then Norton told me he sold it, and I don't know where the money went. I think he lost it, Gareth. He lost the foundry. Gareth could barely bridle the rage in his voice. She nodded. How? How could he? Your uncle had built a fortune with it. It was his legacy. Her bottom lip slipped between her front teeth. Norton refuses to admit to it. But he gambles, Gareth. He has since you left for war. He gambles and he loses. He said he sold it, but there were never any funds from it. I don't know where they went, and if you had sent money... Her voice cracked. The bastard. Her eyes narrowed at him. Gareth forced calm into his voice. Your uncle wanted so much more for you, for all of us once we were back together. I know, and I was just as angry, but I have not even had time to think on it. I've been far too busy securing employment and watching the children. Now this, her hand motioned in a circle in front of her. You appear when I think you are dead. You tell me Norton has been lying to me about you for the past year. I don't even know what to do with this. My dead husband alive? Much less with the fact that Norton took the money you sent. Is Norton in London or still in Berkshire? London. Gareth set his other hand on top of her shoulder, unable to stop his fingers from drifting inward to brush against the back of her neck. She didn't jump away, didn't jerk from the touch. An achievement. His voice dipped low, vehement. I never stopped sending the funds, Nick. I have always been taking care of you, or at least I thought I was. I never should have. Her eyes went wide, her voice suddenly sharp as she took a step backward, breaking contact. Never should have what, Gareth? What would you have done? Stalk me from afar? Her head shook, her words turning bitter. Even if you sent the funds, it all comes back to one thing, Gareth. You have been back for a year. A year! It comes back to the fact you abandoned me. She gasped a deep breath, her arms folding across her stomach. To hold herself upright or to block him, he wasn't sure. An abandonment is an abandonment, regardless of the money, Gareth. Her voice went raw, her words slow, pointed. And you abandoned me. For a long moment she looked at him, her eyes searching his face. The green of her irises haunted. With a quick shake of her head, she turned from him, walking toward the children. He didn't dare follow. Chapter 7. Impossible. Nicolina saw it from down the street, but couldn't believe it. Not her brother. Not after how they had been forced to live those first few penniless months when they had come to London. Not with their stay in the decay of St. Giles. Not with the squalor they had endured. With every step she took, she prayed she was mistaking what was happening, that the atrocity in front of her was her imagination. Impossible. It couldn't be her brother badgering that woman in a threadbare dress, clutching a babe, threatening her. No. Impossible. Norton didn't see her coming. Didn't see her until she stepped in, wedging herself between him and the crying woman. Shock overtook her brother's face. Making herself as wide a shield as possible, she looked over her shoulder to the woman. A girl, even, she looked so incredibly young. "Do you have a man?" The woman shook her head. "Dead." "He." Nicolina poked a finger into Norton's chest without looking at him. "Is this man demanding your rent?" The woman looked past Nicolina's head to Norton, instant fear flooding her face. "Do not look at him," Nicolina demanded. "Look at me. Is he demanding your rent?" The woman gave a shaky nod, her hand tightening around the back of her whimpering babe's head, trying to calm it to her chest. Nicolina turned, shoving at Norton with her shoulder as she spun to the woman. Only a half-head taller than Nicolina, he had to take a bracing step against her motion. She untied her reticule from her wrist and pressed the bag alongside the babe into the crook of the woman's arm. "Take this. Pay off your debt, and it should be enough for a new start in a safer area." The woman nodded, her tears drowning out the gratitude trying to form on her lips. Only able to nod her appreciation, the woman slipped backward through the frame of the doorway and drew closed the ragged sheet currently being used as a door. Nicolina whipped back to Norton. "This is what has become of you, a common thug." "How did you find me, Nicolina?" The vein that cut at a slant across Norton's forehead had started to throb, his cheeks filling in with a mottled pink. Colour had always shown easily through Norton's skin, his body not able to hold any fat or much muscle. "I asked old Mr. Thompson if he had seen you. He knows where you gamble. From there it was not hard." Her thumb pointed over her shoulder. "Truly, Norton, this is what you have sunk to? Threatening widowed mothers for their rent coins." "I don't have a choice in the matter, Nicolina. I have my own debts to worry about, to pay off." "And this is how you pay them off? You've become a dunghill thug. Who do you owe so deeply that you would sink to this wretched level of thievery?" "Bornstein," she gasped. "Bornstein? I thought you daft before, but now you are truly an idiot, Norton. You know how dangerous that man is." Norton sighed, his thin fingers running through his unkempt brown hair. "Why did you find me, Nicolina? Don't you have some brats to tend to? Gareth is alive. Norton went still. He is. Don't you dare! She grabbed his arm, jerking him to the alleyway to her left, her voice pitched to scalding. You bloody well know he is. You've been taking his money meant from me. The funds he has been sending every month. You told me it was gone, that he was gone. Dead, Norton, dead. For a year you made me think that Gareth was dead. No, I never said that. I never said he was dead. You assumed that. I assumed that because the money stopped, Norton, and you know that. You insinuated it, and then did nothing to correct me. You could have told me, but instead you lied. Lies on top of lies. He leaned in, trying to use his slight height advantage to overwhelm her. I am just trying to survive here, Nicolina, the same as you. Survive? Both of her hands flew upward. What have you had to survive, Norton? Not a war. You didn't go there. You had the responsibilities of Uncle Felix's foundry to keep you from that. You had everything. The estate, our house, the foundry, and this is what has become of you? All of that wasn't enough, so you've been taking Gareth's funds every month and doing what with it? What? Gambling? Was it the same for the foundry? Did you lose it in a bet as well, Norton? Is that what really happened? You squandered it away for what? A few hours at a table? Because you're stupid? Because you're too weak? The back of his hand struck her across the face. Fast and brutal. It sent her flying, and she had to catch herself on the brick building next to them. She shoved off from the wall, the sharp taste of blood flooding her tongue. She paused as her eyes closed, and she lifted her fingers to her instantly throbbing left cheek. Her eyes opened slowly, her look skewering him. She let her fingers fall from her cheek, and she seethed a breath, reining in her fury until her voice was icy in its control. That one I will let slide, Norton, because you are my brother. But do not test me. You may be stronger than me, but you never could best me with a blade. And I still carry mine. She welled up a wave of derision into her eyes and slowly looked him up and down. I imagine you lost yours long ago. Before he could utter another word, she pushed past him and started walking toward the hack she had hired to wait for her. Nicolina, I'm sorry. His voice cut through the din of the activity on the street. Nicolina, please, I'm sorry. I'm working on something big. I need you for it. Nicolina, I'm sorry. His voice trailed. She heard the remorse in his voice, heard it echo in his weakness. But that was what Norton was. Weak, scared, scrambling through life, hoping not to get caught. She had always suspected it of her brother, the cowardice of his soul, and now she knew it to be true. His remorse held no weight, not any more. She didn't slow, didn't turn around. She couldn't afford to, with tears of rage brimming in her eyes. She had believed in her brother for too long, and it had cost her everything. I haven't seen you glance at a dram of brandy even once since you came to work here, Callison. Gareth's eyes flickered up from the short glass of brandy sitting on the table in front of him. Logan moved into the wide room set aside specifically for his men in the lowest level of the revelry's tempest. Has the evening started? Am I needed upstairs? No, not for a few minutes. I have that new guard you've been training standing at your post. Logan lifted and set a simple chair sideways, then sat down across the square wooden table from Gareth, draping his forearm wide along the edge of it as he leaned back. He nodded with his forehead to the brandy. Not one swallow have you considered in all this time. Yet that is one full glass before you now. So you poured it, but you haven't touched it. Logan's middle finger tapped the rough wood of the table. You were in that same spot an hour ago. Gareth's eyes drifted down to the glass. I haven't needed it since you dragged me into here and made me a guard. Which means something has changed. Gareth nodded, his fingers itching to wrap around the glass. Would this have anything to do with the woman I untied in the stable the other night? Gareth's look whipped up to Logan. You untied her. Logan shrugged, looking off to the low flames and the brick fireplace in the corner of the room. She wasn't freeing herself in any other way. She would have. How do you know that? She is good at wiggling out of knots. And you know this how? Gareth sighed. She told you I was her husband, didn't she? Logan gave him a quick glance, and then his steel-grey eyes went back to the fire. Aye, she did. Long seconds passed, the only noise the distant cacophony from the floors above them, filling with the Tons elite arriving to game the dark hours away. It was due to be a busy night. Logan's continued silence was both a blessing and curse. It told Gareth that Logan was not about to judge him. But in that moment, Gareth rather wanted to be judged. Gareth reached out, wrapping his fingers around the smooth surface of the glass. Familiar, soothing, but he couldn't lift the tumbler. For a long time, I haven't looked at anything beyond the four walls surrounding me at any given moment. And Logan leaned forward as his gaze travelled to him, his eyes pausing for a second on Gareth's hand around the glass of amber liquid. There is a whole world that went on without me since the time I left this soil. Fortunes lost, choices that have been forced upon people. Gareth paused, his fingers tightening around the tumbler. And I haven't seen any of it, haven't wanted to see any of it. Couldn't bring myself to care. Logan nodded, his grey eyes solemn. Hiding from the world has consequences just the same as living in it does. Gareth lifted the glass from the table. The rim halfway to his lips, he paused, looking to Logan. The man's gaze was boring into him. Gareth's eyebrow arched. It was the first time he had ever seen a modicum of judgment on Logan's face. What? Logan let out a sigh, leaning back in his chair. The flash of judgment eased from his face. Why did we fight in the war, Callison? Remind me. To make our world safe. The pad of Logan's middle finger started tapping on the table again. And you decided to give up that fight just because the war is over? His fingers stilled as he looked at Gareth. That fight is never over, Callison. Never. Gareth exhaled, lifting the glass to his lips. The brandy hit his tongue, swirling into the crevices in his mouth. Logan did know how to take care of his men. It was expensive, smooth, probably the best brandy he had ever set to his mouth. And it tasted like piss, like failure, like finally giving up on his life. He swallowed the liquid trickling past the lump in his throat. He set the glass down and stood up from the table. It's yours to finish, Lippenstein. He flicked a finger toward the glass. It'd be a shame to let it go to waste. Logan offered him one nod. Gareth stepped past him and out the door. It was time to work. Chapter 8. What is this? Nicolina jumped as the heavy barn door to Lord Samport's carriage house thunked shut behind her. Her look whipped over her shoulder to the sealed entrance. Damn that stable boy dragging her out here. She paused with her head craned backward, closing her eyes and inhaling a deep breath. It took a long moment before she turned her face forward, her fingertips curling into her palms. She cracked her eyes open. 50 paces away, Gareth stood on the far end of the building between a pile of hay and a phaeton. The carriage house was large enough to hold 2 more coaches, but as Lord Samport was currently attending business, most of the structure was empty. A vast cavernous space of dirt and hay stretched between her and her husband. Only a row of windows high along the roofline let dim daylight in. Next to Gareth, the tips of 2 swords were stuck into the ground, the handles high and crossed in front of the hay. "Gareth, this is my place of employment!" Nicolina rushed forward, her whispered words hissing across the distance, strangled enough to keep anyone working in the adjoining stables from hearing her. "I would prefer not to be fired from my post today." She stopped halfway to him. "Lord Samport is out." Gareth took a slight step toward her, his voice loud. Too loud. "The children are with their tutor. The stable boy has cleared both the stable and the carriage house and is standing guard outside. There is not a person that can hear you, Nick. Hear us." "Are you mad? What are you even thinking being here, Gareth?" The right side of his mouth lifted in a determined line. "Someone reminded me I am a fighter, Nick. I lost that along the way, and the reality is that you are the only thing worth fighting for." Her eyes narrowed at him. "Someone had to remind you of that." "I have not made the best choices, Nick, I admit to that." Blast him. She stalked 10 more paces toward him. "You need to leave, Gareth. You cannot do this. Barge into my life, unexpected. I was not prepared to randomly see you on Brook Street. I was not prepared for you to accost me in Hyde Park. And I am not prepared for this." Her hand flew across the air in front of her. "Whatever this is. This is your chance." His head tilted sideways to nod at the swords. "You were furious with me, I understand that. So this is your chance. Make me pay. Make me suffer." "Make you suffer?" Her eyes flickered down to the steel standing up from the ground next to his left leg. Her look lifted to him. "You are insane if you think I will sink to this, Gareth." "Don't tell me you don't want to swing a sword at my head, Nick. Hear the clash of steel next to my skin. Draw my blood." Her arms crossed in front of her ribcage, her chin jutting out as she stared at him. He truly was mad. Due for bedlam. His voice dropped low. "I recognize the anger in you, Nick. It is the very first thing you see when you look at me. Every time. The fury. And then you can see nothing else. Anger first. And then it is only anger." His fingers slipped along the gleaming gold filigree hilt of one of the swords, and he jerked the blade from the ground. He started toward her, his brown eyes pinning her into place. Her head swung to the left, both to avoid his penetrating gaze and to hide her cheek that had swelled, courtesy of her brother. "And you think striking you with a sword will change my anger?" "Well, I hope you don't manage to strike me." He stopped in front of her, gripping the point of the sword with his free hand and then holding the handle out to her. "But if that is what this demands, a blade in my flesh, then I am at your mercy. It is eating you alive, Nick, the anger. Even if it is warranted, even if you have every right to be mired in it. I do." Her eyes still averted to the side. Her arms tightened around her middle as she refused to take the handle of the sword from him. He took a long step closer to her, leaning down so his lips were right next to her ear, his hot breath invading the skin along her neck. "But the thing is, Nick, the anger, that has to change." His voice sank even lower, almost into a growl. "You have to stop seeing me through this haze of fury. I have to do no such thing. You do. It is the only way." He took a step backward and drove the tip of the sword into the ground next to her. The blade stood upright from the dirt, swaying slightly with the force. "There is not a reason on earth for me to listen to you." She eyed him as he turned away and moved toward the other sword near the hay. He stopped with his back to her, his hand slowly moving to grasp the handle of the other sword. "I only need one." He looked over his shoulder to her, his brown eyes piercing. "I am your husband." The words stole her breath. Her head fell forward, down, and silent. Damn him. Damn him to hell and back for abandoning her, for leaving her in the first place. Damn him for marrying her. Damn him for being alive, for being her husband. Damn him for making her want him in spite of all of it. It took long moments, the war in her head, the fury welling with every breath, before she gave a long, slow nod to herself. She unthreaded her arms and reached out to grab the hilt in front of her without looking up, her eyes trained on the gold gilt of the handle. One of her uncle's masterpieces. How had Gareth acquired it? With her free hand she tucked rogue strands of hair along her cheeks behind her ears. Braids would be preferable, but the pins holding her hair up into a knot would have to do. Her skirts would hinder her slightly, but they were wide enough to allow movement. With a deep breath she steadied herself, focusing her mind along the centre of her body, just as Uncle Felix had taught her, just as she had mastered as his best student. Her brothers, Gareth, the other boys that her uncle had trained, some of them had been able to beat her by sheer force of power, but none had ever been as canny, as quick as Uncle Felix had taught her to be. The memory of those times, of the fire pulsating from her centre out to her limbs, swallowed her, bringing her into the past. When she looked up, Gareth was standing before her, his sword angled high at the ready, just as he always had when they had sparred in her uncle's courtyard. Most opponents liked to approach her with a low sword because of her size, but not Gareth. Gareth had always come at her ready to strike, ready to challenge her. Hours of this very thing, yet he always let her have first blow. That hadn't changed. Hell, Nick. Gareth's forehead creased as he squinted at her face. What is that? What? He pointed to her cheek with the tip of his sword. His face had hardened, his jawline stiffening as rage took over his brown eyes. It only took a moment for her to know exactly what he was pointing at. It is nothing. She lifted her blade, knocking his sword away from her face. The clang echoed throughout the carriage house, and several horses nickered in the adjoining stable. He wouldn't have it. He lifted his sword, pointing to her cheek again. Who the hell hit you, Nick? Tell me this instant. I'm not telling you a damn thing, Gareth. She smacked his sword away again, this time setting the blades long against each other until she slid the tip of his to the ground. Holding his sword to the dirt, she stepped in on him. You wanted to fight, Gareth? Fight! She jumped backward, sending her sword in a wide arc to knock his blade up into the air. Before he could set his stance, she pounced, a straight-on swing that sent his arm flying backward and shifting him off balance. She moved in, swinging from high over her shoulder at his torso. Even standing crooked, his blade was quick to intercept the blow, sloughing off the strike. Fast to recover, she swung 3 more times, each blow ending in a resounding clash of steel against steel. A 4th blow, and he met her sword with his own high in the air, pushing her backward. She stumbled a step, the toes of her boots slipping on strands of hay. Gareth's eyebrow cocked at her. She never stumbled. Never. She righted herself, widening her stance, and they began to circle each other, both with swords at the ready. Your wrist is limp. Your feet are slow. He jabbed forward with a short strike that she easily parried away. I haven't had anyone to spar with in a long time. Not since Uncle Felix died. Her left foot crossed over her right as she circled him. Her eyes focused on his thumb, pressed onto the grip just behind the crossguard. She could always tell Gareth's next move by watching his thumb. The knuckles of his thumb dipped, and the tip of his sword dove just as she knew it would. With a swift arc, she blocked his downswing and spun to his left side, advancing forward with another set of blows he had to awkwardly block. He did have one thing correct. He hadn't underestimated her wrath. Each of her blows flew harder, more brutal than the last, her anger boiling into shots of fury coursing out her arm, the blade an extension of her rage. Every clash satisfying, every grunt he uttered reward for her ferocity. Harder, Nick! Harder! She stilled, her sword angled high over her head at him. "I left you, Nick," he growled. "Abandoned you. I did that. I left you." With a low screech, she attacked. Sparks flew. She parried around him, blow after blow, sending him to the defensive with only 3 strikes of his own returned. But he kept at the defense, never letting her come close to his body, maneuvering against her quickness. Another spin, low, blocking his blow at her head, and she had the back of him wide open. She moved in, her sword near to reaching his neck when he twisted around, his blade coming fast from over his head. The power of it knocked her sword to the side, sending her down to one knee, just to keep a grip on her hilt. He moved forward, pressing his sudden advantage with a blow she blocked only at the last second, with one hand on her handle and the other on the flat of her blade. Their swords crossed. He pressed down, pushing against her strength. She wedged her foot into the dirt, locking her knee to the ground to leverage against him. Leaning into her blade with all her might, she shoved upward against his sword. No matter. He forced her to slide a step backward. Then another. Then another. He closed down in on her. The crossed blades locked solid, slowly moving closer and closer to her face with every step she slid backward. He always had been one of the few that could beat her with strength. Damn him. Her arms began to shake, and in the breath where steel was about to touch her forehead, Gareth growled, ripping her sword from her right hand and tossing both of the blades to side. Chapter 9. The swords clanked, steel on steel, as they clattered to the ground. But Nicolina didn't hear it, didn't see it, didn't know anything but Gareth's lips meeting hers, lifting her and pressing her backward, crushing her body against the side of the sleek black phaeton. His lips parted immediately, his tongue invading, demanding, ravenous for the taste of her. It deluged her. Him. Everything about him. His scent, leather and pine and blackberries. His strength, lifting her body with no effort, pressing her back flat into the wood of the carriage. His breath on her face, his lips kneading her. His fingers pressing into her flesh, moving to her breast to simultaneously coddle and conquer. There was no defense of it, no margin for words. Only him. Her fury morphed into a brutal, aching need for him, for her husband, for the only man she had ever loved. For him to take her like he once had, commanding her body, making her scream. Her anger still boiling, she nipped his lower lip and he retaliated, deepening the kiss, his tongue mastering her mouth, his body pressing her harder into the carriage, his fingers rolling her nipple into submission under her clothes. She met him, her hips thrusting outward, her hands finding way to his hair, pulling, tugging, as her nails raked along his neck. Without breaking contact on her mouth, he shifted her to the right and she dropped slightly, her backside landing on the low cutaway of the carriage's entrance. His hands dropped and he tugged up the skirts of her black dress and chemise, lifting the folds of cloth higher. The air hit her bare thighs and sent cold tingles along her legs, shocking the nerves running to her core, pounding, pulsating just under her skin. It had been far too long since his hands were on her body, since he was stripping her bare, since he was inside of her. His hands ran rough up her legs, his thumbs dragging along the throbbing nerves along her inner thighs. She wedged her fingers in between his arms, fumbling for the buttons on the front flap of his trousers and setting him free. She couldn't pull her hands away from him as he was bared, full and immense and throbbing. Her fingers ran up and down his member, squeezing, caressing the smooth ridges. She hadn't remembered how the pulsating of his sleek skin stole her breath, how it turned her aching need for him into a force that could not be denied. His thumb dove into the center of her with long strokes that quickened within her folds, then slowed, driving her near to madness. He broke the kiss, his face pulling away from her as his left hand came up to cup the side of her cheek, his thumb wrapping along her jaw. She opened her eyes to find him staring at her, his hazy brown eyes demanding, but cautious. It was a question he didn't dare speak. It was a question he didn't need to ask. She grabbed the back of his hair and yanked him down to her lips. Her other hand slid fully around his shaft, pulling him toward her. She needed this just as much as him, maybe more. With a growl that sent his chest thundering against her, his fingers dropped from her face and he wrapped his hands along her hips, lifting her. He slid into her, slick and stretching her wide. Her thighs opened, spreading as far as she could manage with the side walls of the carriage opening on either side of her. A final push and he was deep inside her. She gasped, and he stilled for several heartbeats, waiting for her to breathe again. When she finally managed a breath, she swiveled her hips slightly. It was all the invitation he needed. He drew out slowly, then drove into her hard. That he had always known exactly how to do. Drive into her fast, deep, full. The angle of it drawing her hips onto him, making her body move against his, begging him for more, begging for completion, deliverance. Her screams started in short order. He would pull from her, and then meet her lips to swallow the scream his next thrust caused, again and again. Her hips bucked and she had to grip onto the sides of the carriage for support, for anything solid against the ravaging of her nerves, the ravaging of the very air she tried to breathe. He plunged hard, deeper than all the rest, and she could feel him swell, expanding in the center of her body. And yet he pulled out even as his body shuddered, not stopping, refusing to cease until she was there with him. Harder, reaching depths beyond rational, he slid in and out until she was screaming, flailing against his grip, keeping her steady from the onslaught. And then he struck her deep, delivering her from the agony. Burst after burst of pure, sweet madness invaded her veins. Her scream was met with the darkest growl from the depths of his chest. For a moment they were suspended in time and air, their chests rising and meeting, battling with every gasp for breath. Gareth's hands moved from her hips, letting the lip of the phaeton's entrance hold her weight as he wrapped his arms around her body. The blink in time vanished. The sudden vacuum that had just made the last 3 years disappear like nothing had happened. It all rushed back upon her in a jarring wave. Her face buried into his shirt just above his waistcoat. She shook her head. "What are you doing to me, Gareth? The swords. This. I don't know what to do with this. Not when I cannot deny you." "You are not going to regret this, Nick." "How can I not? This was a mistake." She tilted her head upward, her chin resting on his chest as she searched for his eyes. "Just because this needed to happen, our bodies meeting, does not mean I cannot regret it. Regret my lack of will against you. My body's need of yours is not what vexes us." His hand lifted from her back, his knuckles brushing against her swollen cheek. "Who hit you, Nick? It does not matter. I managed the situation and it is over and done with. That is all you need to know." "Blast it, Nick." Her eyebrows arched. "Or shall we talk about why you're limping?" He jerked slightly away. He saw that. "It is hard to see, but you can't hide it from me, Gareth. I know exactly how you walk. I saw it in your gait at the park, but I was too angry to acknowledge it. I saw it just now while we were sparring." His arms dropped from her as he pulled fully away and turned to the side, his head down and silent as he reset his white linen shirt and buttoned the front flap of his trousers. Slowly she slipped off the edge of the phaeton, smoothing the front of her skirts as they dropped. She stared at him. He wasn't going to tell her. Not that she expected him to. She took a step toward him, her fingers lifting to go to his arm. "Gareth, Nick, there are things you need to know." His head turned to her, his brown eyes haunted. "Things that happened during the war," she gasped, her fingers snapping back to her chest as she stepped away from him. No, I do not want to know." Her head shook, her feet shuffling backward. I cannot know. Not now. This is too much. Too much all at once. I cannot think about that." Her feet stopped, her body stilling as tears welled in her eyes. But she forced her eyes to him as realization overwhelmed her. "Not when I want you back, holding me. My husband. But the war? I cannot, no, not now, Gareth." He took a long stride to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Damn it, Nick. You cannot avoid this forever. You have to know." She jerked out of his hold, recoiling back, her arms wrapping around her body as her look dove to the side. "I don't have to know. Not now. This is too much. Not now." "Stop, Nick." His hand lifted, reaching for her. She jumped another step backward before he could grab her. His voice dropped low, both a warning and a plea. "If you cannot even look at me, Nick, what is there for us?" His words sank into the air between them, heavy, accusing, questioning. She couldn't lift her eyes to his face, couldn't force a reply, an answer that she didn't have. What was there for them? He wanted hope, and she wasn't sure she could give it to him. So instead she did the only thing she could. She turned and ran. Chapter 10. "He needs help." Gareth looked down at his plate of roast sirloin and set his fork down. Without fail, Miss Ruby made the best glazed sirloin on King Street, but it currently tasted like air, swallows of fat nothingness sinking down to his belly. He hadn't been able to detect the slightest flavour of any food in the 2 days since being with Nicolina in Lord Samport's carriage house. He'd had her. For one tiny moment in time, he'd had her back, in his arms. His wife. His life. But then he had blinked and it had vanished. His wife couldn't look at him, couldn't hear about the past, couldn't acknowledge it. And he couldn't force her to do so, not with the pain it would cause. His eyes lifted to Logan, sitting across from him in the tavern. It was a rare night off from both the work at the Revelry's Tempest and the singular missions Logan often procured for his men. Gareth shook his head at his boss. "I'm not the one to help him." "You are." Logan lifted his silver tankard and sipped. "It's time. Do you remember where you were when I found you? That sorry state of yourself? In that decrepit pothouse? In that corner, slumped in your own piss and vomit for days? The infection in your leg rotting you from the bottom up?" "I remember." Gareth's fingers curled into a fist on top of the heavy oak table. "You also swore you would never judge." Logan glanced at Gareth's fist and then met his eyes. "I judged just enough to know when to help. And now it is your turn. You need to move on from the Revelry's Tempest. It's time, Callison." "It's not time. It is." Logan took another sip of ale and set down the tankard. "You cannot be in 2 places at once. Not at the Revelry's Tempest at night while you have a wife waiting for you." Gareth bristled. "My wife is not waiting for me." Logan's eyebrow cocked. "No?" Gareth's eyes drifted off to the left and settled on the low fire in the enormous fieldstone fireplace in the corner of the dining room. "Not yet. I imagine you will be rectifying that soon." Gareth shrugged. "If it can be." With a nod, Logan picked up his fork and knife and cut into his sirloin. He took a bite, then looked up to Gareth as he cut his next morsel. After you asked me to procure those swords several days back, I looked into the foundry that created them. Remarkable work they did, beyond the standard weaponry, at least while your wife's uncle was alive. The artist, Felix Madsen, was a talent beyond compare, if those two swords are any indication. He was. He was born from a long line of Spanish swordsmiths. Gareth picked up his fork, jabbing mindlessly at his sirloin. He was also the one to first teach me to fight. Truly. Yes, it was the last thing my mother did before she died. My father was Felix's partner early on, before I was even born, and she made Felix promise to give me an apprenticeship. She even threatened him with eternal haunting if he didn't. Gareth took a bite of the beef, hoping against hope it would taste like something. It didn't. She was convinced it would be safer for me to learn to create weapons than to wield them, especially with Boney running roughshod over the continent. Intelligent woman. Logan slid another bite of beef into his mouth. She was, but she didn't realize Felix would insist I learn to fight with the swords before I learned to create them. He needed me to understand the weight of the steel, how they swung, sliced, cut. It's hard to build something one doesn't use. Gareth picked up his ale and swallowed, helping the meat down his tight throat. Felix was a warrior before he was a craftsman. He made me the same. And that was where you met your wife. It was. Felix was her guardian, and he'd also been training her with swords for 9 years before I arrived there. She beat me soundly and daily in our bouts for 2 years. Logan chuckled. So that is where you perfected your uncommon humility. Gareth's eyebrow quirked. Humility? I doubt it. Logan inclined his head. Let us just say you have never been one to be boastful, and your record in the war earned you every right to be so. A pensive half-smile lifted Gareth's cheek. He had gone to war for one reason alone, and no matter what Logan thought of his feats on the battlefield, Gareth lived with the knowledge that he had failed in that one reason. Gareth took another bite of the beef, chewing slowly to purchase time as he searched for a reply. He swallowed. Yes, well, many of my actions since I was on a battlefield beget nothing but shame. He pointed at Logan with his fork. But do tell me what you found out about the foundry. I only just learned that my wife's brother had lost possession of it. Logan nodded. At the tables, or so the rumour goes. And since Bornstein took it over, Bornstein owns it. Hell. Exactly. All the true artisans left once Bornstein took it over. The foundry has been producing little more than brittle rubbish for the last year. Gareth's fist pounded on the table, his head shaking as his gaze travelled upward to the rough-hewn timbers spanning the dining room. For all that Felix had taught him, for all he owed the man, he had sworn to keep the foundry running just as Felix had designed it, to keep his legacy alive. Instead, Gareth had let Nicolina's wastrel brother gamble it away. So I bought it. Gareth sputtered a cough, his look whipping to Logan. Logan sat, chewing, not the slightest change in his countenance. You bought the foundry. I did. Not under my name, of course. You know why. But I bought it, and now I need someone to run it. His look pinned Gareth. A bit presumptuous, wouldn't you say? Logan shrugged. The foundry can produce greatness. It did once. It can again. Setting his fork and knife down, he leaned forward. Run the foundry, Gareth. Make it profitable again, and half of it is yours. You will have your nights back. You will have time for your wife. That is, when you finally convince her she does want you. And if I or the Revelry's Tempest needs you, we will call upon you. Lippenstein. But there is a condition. You have to bring in your replacement first. Gareth's head bowed, his eyes closing for a long moment as he reconciled Logan's terms. Grayson. Gareth's head remained lowered, but his eyes opened, looking to Logan. Where is he? At the Joker's Roost in St. Giles. Isn't that one of Bornstein's establishments? It is. And Grayson's state? Much the same as you were a year ago. Logan picked up his fork and knife and started cutting his next bite of sirloin. Covered in his own filth, 2 drinks from death. Gareth nodded, his gut clenching. He remembered too well how Logan had found him. Logan reached into an inner pocket of his dark coat. He pulled free a velvet sack, dropping it on the table. Coins clinked within. Take this, pay off his debts, drag him to the Maddox house. Get him sober. Gareth gave one long nod. The last thing he wanted to deal with was a belligerent arse without a lick of respect, waiting for death to take pity on him. His eyebrow cocked as he looked at Logan. Much the same as I was. Logan nodded. Gareth pushed his plate away. He couldn't choke down another bite. He grabbed the sack and tucked it into his coat, then stood. Stepping alongside the table, he paused, his knuckles rapping the oak table. Logan. Yes? Logan looked up at him. When will your time be? Logan paused, uncharacteristic for him, as the man paused for nothing. He gave a slight shake of his head. I do not know, Gareth. Recognize it when it comes, my friend. Logan offered a slight incline of his head, his face carved into its customary unmovable stone. Gareth walked across the dining room and opened the door to the street. He had a wastrel to wrangle. Chapter 11. Gareth slipped out into the cool night air, closing the door to the gardens quietly behind him. The space was calm, as it should be since the gaming had begun only an hour before inside the Revelry's Tempest. It usually took several hours before people needed a cool respite in the gardens. Respite from too much claret, too much losing, too much of a wandering eye that needed satisfaction. But still one of the maids had said she had seen activity in the back corner of the garden, and Gareth wasn't about to let the report go unchecked. Rubbing his eyes with the base of his palms, he gave a quick shake of his head, trying to snap alertness into his muddled mind. He had been up for the past day and night with barely a half-hour's worth of sleep squeezed in. Forcing a fully soused man a head taller than him with brick-like hands into a hack, and then keeping him captive in a room to sober him up, had been easier imagined than done. Gareth craned his neck so he could see the dark windows of the townhouse's top floor. Not chancing leaving Grayson alone at the Maddox house, he'd had to drag the man to the Revelry's Tempest, and then had shoved him into an upper room. At least Grayson was now finally sleeping off his latest binge. Taking 3 steps down onto the main gravel pathway that cut the garden in half, Gareth moved to start a quick round of the corners. He hadn't made it 5 strides before a figure jumped out from the deep shadows in one of the rose arbours. Gareth. He jumped, blinking hard at the figure in the shadows, just to assure himself he was awake and not walking about in the midst of a dream. Pulling the hood of her dark cloak off her head and exposing her blonde hair, Nicolina rushed to him, planting herself in front of him. Gareth, I need your help. His eyes scanned the dark recesses of the gardens lined with evergreen hedges. His look settled on his wife. He told the maid to get me out here. I did. I need your help. He stifled a sigh. For the smallest second he held hope that she had shown up in the dark merely to see him. But instead she only needed his help, and was apparently desperate enough for it that she would risk getting caught in the gardens. But if her need for his assistance was the only thing that had driven her to be standing in front of him, he'd take it. He grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward the townhouse. Not out here. She didn't resist, moving along in step with him as he led her into the Revelry's Tempest and up the 4 flights of servant stairs to the top floor of the townhouse. He moved down the hallway, stopping at the third door and ushering her into an empty room. The space tiny, wooden beams of the roofline angled sharply down just 2 feet inside. He went over to the chest of drawers next to the bed to light the lantern that sat on top. Standing with his back to his wife, Gareth lit the lamp slowly, taking a moment to collect himself. For as tired as he had been 5 minutes before, he was now wide awake, blood rushing madcap through his veins. He rubbed his eyes one more time before he turned around to Nicolina. She had drawn her bottom lip into her mouth, worrying it with her teeth. "You need my help, Nick." She took a deep breath, her chest rising as she smoothed the front of her black cloak and then met his eyes. "I do. And before you say no, please hear me out." She paused for another moment, stalling before her words gushed out. "Norton came to me and he was drunk and asking for help. He said he was working on something important days ago and that he could make it work, absolutely make it work, if I would help him. And he needs it to work or he is going to be so deep into Bornstein's clutches that he will never be able to get out, so he—" "I'm not helping that wastrel, Nick." Gareth's jaw tightened. She stepped to him, her hand going to his chest. "You have to, Gareth. You don't—" He snatched her wrist, dragging her hand away from his body. "He was the one that hit you, wasn't he?" Her mouth clamped closed. "Tell me the truth, Nick. He hit you." Her green eyes dipped downward and she exhaled. Her eyes slipped closed as she nodded. He tossed her wrist away from him. "This is why you come to me, Nick. That profligate arse that lost your uncle's legacy. Stole all of the funds I sent to take care of you. Hit you." The last 2 words hissed through gritted teeth. He stepped around her, going for the door, his voice a growl. "You are mad if you think I'm helping that bastard." His hand wrapped around the doorknob and she grabbed him, her fingers digging into his upper arm, her words a brittle whisper. "I cannot lose another brother, Gareth." He froze. The air froze. The world froze. The only thing still alive, still moving, were her fingers tightening, throbbing as they clutched him. Slowly, achingly, his head dropped forward and he had to remind himself to breathe. 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 Gareth. Her fingertips dug even harder into his muscle. "You told me you would take care of my little brother, Gareth." Her voice shook. "You swore it." A blow straight to his chest, stilling his heart. "Yet Pippin died." Her whisper was flat, stating the fact. Gareth yanked his arm to free himself from her grip, but her hand was locked, not letting go. Instead, her fingers tugged, starting to rage. "You wanted to talk about this, Gareth. You demanded as much 2 days ago. So this is it. This is what there is for us. Let us talk. Pippin died in the war, even though you swore you would keep him safe. You swore it to me. So there it is. It is said, open between us now. And because he died, you abandoned me." "Nick." His voice dipped low into a warning and he jerked his arm. "Let us talk about that. Pippin died. So tell me, did he die in a field, in muck, a sword, a bullet? Did he breathe his last breath in your arms? Did he know what was happening? Did he say anything? Was it long? Was he—" Her voice hiccuped, stumbling over her words. "Was he in pain? Did he suffer?" Her hand, gripping him, started to shake. "Damn it, Gareth, look at me!" His head tilted back, his eyes going to the ceiling as he refused to turn to her. Her breath stopped, silent, only a slight gurgle as she swallowed back a sob. Then her voice, raw, ripped through the air between them. "Look at me, Gareth. Tell me." He closed his eyes, his head shaking as the vision of Pippin in the midst of exploding ground, dirt blasting in all directions, invaded his mind. Pippin's body jerking, his torso flying backward, his arms flailing, falling. It was quick. A bullet. He didn't suffer. He said the words quickly before he couldn't manage to form them. She gasped, her fingers tightening, and then going limp on his arm. Her grip eased, her hand falling away as she took a step backward. A step away from him. Just as he imagined, just as he feared, just as he knew it would be. He had never wanted to be in this position, never wanted to lose her this fully, this irrevocably. If they were apart, at least he could pretend hope, still had her in some way. Not this. Not the end. His head dropped forward as he fought the vicious lump expanding in his throat. "Look at me, Gareth." The quiver in Nicolina's voice told him she was fighting tears. The floorboards creaked as she took another step backward. His eyes closed and he tried to inhale, the air going nowhere. He couldn't turn, couldn't look at her face, couldn't acknowledge the end. "Of all the moments to face me, Gareth, this is the one time you need to." His grip on the doorknob tightened, his knuckles turning white. "It isn't me who can't look at you, Gareth." Her voice had gone soft, a mere whisper. "It is you. You who can't face me on this." The lump in his throat finally broke and air made it into his lungs. It still took him moments to form words, his voice like gravel as he spoke to the door. "I failed you, Nick. I failed him. Why is that hard to understand? I failed, and I could not put myself in front of you. I could not bear to see your face, to see my failure in your eyes." His eyes squinted shut, his grasp on the doorknob the only thing grounding him to the room. She exhaled long and low. "You cannot move on." The words slipped into the room, laced with consternation. He had no reply. "Gareth, I can live in that moment when the missive from the crown arrived. That moment I cracked that seal. That moment I learned Pippin was dead." Her words started low, stuttered. "I existed in that moment for a long time. But I did so not because Pippin died, but because that was the moment when you truly abandoned me. The funds you sent, yes, the money still arrived during those months, so I knew you were alive. But the letters, your letters, they stopped, Gareth. They stopped the moment Pippin died. I just needed something, anything from you. Pippin died under your watch. And you could not even write me of the news. Do you know how that destroyed me more than anything? I could not face you, Nick. I could not write you. Not with my failure. Not with what I cost you. Not with how you would look at me. So face me now. Nick, you need to turn to me, Gareth. Face me, come what may." Her words, not brittle, not a command, just a soft request sliced into his gut. If he was ever going to do anything right by his wife, this was it. This was the moment. His fingers unclenched from the doorknob and he turned, his eyes opening, lifting to her face. Come what may. She stared at him, the green of her eyes glossy with welled tears that didn't fall. Pain, regret, frustration. And then he saw it. One more thing in her eyes he barely recognized but never should have forgotten. Love. It was unfair of me, Gareth. Her hand flattened against her stomach, holding herself steady. I never should have put that responsibility upon your shoulders. Pippin was the one determined to join the army. He was the one determined to fight for the crown. And I made you go. Made you watch over him because I knew he would need it. I knew you could handle it. You were always a warrior, Gareth. Pippin wasn't. But that was his choice. And it was my demand of you to keep him safe. Her head dipped down for a moment as she took a deep breath. Her eyes lifted to him. But it was never your heart. You never wanted to fight a war. And I made you. I made you because I had no other choice. Nick. Her hand flew up to stop him. I am sorry, Gareth. So brutally and wholly sorry I put that upon you. You never deserved it. But you let me put that upon your shoulders regardless. He took a step toward her, his hands itching to grab her, drag her to him. But he held back, held space between them as his head shook. No, Nick, I take that responsibility. Pippin was my family, my brother just as much as yours. When my mother sent me to Felix after she died, I had nothing left in this world. And then suddenly I had all of you. Your family became my family. His look centered on her. Pippin was going regardless of how every one of us tried to convince him not to. So that meant I was going regardless. There was no other choice. Her lips drew inward, 2 drops of her unshed tears spilling over her lower lashes. It wasn't your fault, Gareth. It never was. The air left him, nearly sending him to his knees. Those words from her lips. His entire existence shook, shattering. She didn't blame him. He moved toward her, not fully believing it, not believing it until he could touch her, feel it within her. No, wait. She jumped a step backward, her hands flying up between them. I still need to know. Pippin, I understand. How you took his death upon yourself and what that must have done to you. She stopped, her head shaking as her eyes went to the upper corner of the room. But me, Gareth. Me, I don't understand. Her look dropped to him, piercing him. When you came back, did you never think of me? How could you come back to English soil and never... Her voice dropped off, her gaze slipping to the floor by his feet. This was it. This was where he had truly failed her. And he had no excuse for it. He braced himself. He was so close to touching her, to holding her, to having her back, to truly having his wife back, to seeing the love and only love in her eyes. And it could all slip away in this moment. He inhaled, gathering his breath. He was done with avoidance, done with weakness, done with cowardice. He had to move forth, regardless of the consequences. This he owed her. I don't know what to say, Nick. His fingers ran through his hair. I dream about you every night. I dream about you walking away from me, my hand outstretched to you, and you walking away, not looking back. And I am screaming at you to not leave me. Don't leave me. And you keep walking away, ripping my heart from my chest. Every single night since Pippin died, I have had that dream. And it always ends the same. You were gone. His head shook slightly, his words soft, the intensity of them vibrating throughout the room. That is why I could never bring myself to face you, Nick. I could never bear to let my dreams become reality. A frown, near to horror, etched into her face. How could you possibly think that of me? Have so little faith? He exhaled, his eyes closing for a long second before he forced himself to look at her. I never thought I would fail Pippin, but his death destroyed everything I thought I knew, every belief I had. The belief in us. I couldn't trust myself, much less you. Her lips parted in a slight gasp. For the longest heartbeats she stared at him, searching his eyes, his mind, his very soul. And then she ran straight at him, tackling him, her arms wrapping about his body. The force of her sent him flying backwards, slipping, and his back slammed into the wall behind him. Grabbing her, he managed to keep them upright and steady. "I am not gone, Gareth." She craned her neck so she could see his face, capturing his gaze. "I am here, and I want my husband back. I want us in the same bed. I want us going to sleep together and waking up together. I want you to laugh with me again. I want you to hold me. I want your hands running along my body. I want you in every way possible." She untangled her arms from his body and set her hand along his jaw. "I want you back to love." For the second time that night, the air left him, and he nearly let the two of them topple to the ground. After everything, after Pippin's death, after the lives he took in the war, somehow, somewhere, he had been granted a reprieve. A reprieve that had given him his wife back, had given him the one thing in the world he needed, her love. His hands trembling, he captured her face between his palms and he kissed her, hard, full of possession and fire and devotion, yet gentle in gratefulness. Her lips moulded under his. Undeniably, she was his once more. She pulled away, her eyes wide as her eyebrows arched. "What is that?" The erratic pounding that he hadn't heard through the blood pulsating in his brain filled his ears. Blast it. Her head turned as she looked at the side wall of the room. "Gareth, who is pounding on that wall?" He sighed, loosening his hold on her face. The very last thing he wanted to do was let his hands leave her body. He glanced at the wall, watching it shake with each brutal hit. "That, unfortunately, is my ticket to the rest of our lives." Her eyebrows drew together. "What?" "My replacement here on the guard. He's locked in there." "Locked in there? In that room? Whatever for?" "He is a raging drunk that is sobering up. Or rather, he probably is sober and is desperate to change that fact. It does not sound as though sobriety is going well. Don't mind him." She gasped, jumping back from him, and her hand went to her throat. "Norton, I cannot believe I forgot." Her fingers went to his forearm. "I need you to help me save him, Gareth. He's the last brother I have." The pounding on the wall grew frantic, and Gareth glanced at it, his lower jaw shifting to the side. He looked at his wife. "Can he even be saved, Nick?" "Yes." His eyebrows cocked. "At least for now." Gareth exhaled a long sigh as his look went to the vibrating wall. "I will help. Thank you. We need to go now." She smiled. A genuine, grateful smile that he wanted to capture and hold until the end of his days. A scream bellowed from the next room. Gareth shook his head. "But I cannot leave in this moment. I have to take care of this man, Nick. An hour. Give me an hour and I will go and get Norton out of whatever mess he's in." "Where is he?" "At the Joker's Roost. And I am coming with you." "No, you are not going into St. Giles at this time of night." "I lived in St. Giles for months, Gareth." His head snapped back. "Blast it, Nick." "You did?" "Yes. But that is done and past. I am coming with you to get Norton. He is expecting me, not you." "No." "Fine. I won't come into the alehouse, but I am coming in the hack. I will wait inside with the curtains drawn." The screams grew louder in the next room. Damn Grayson. They would be able to hear him below at any moment. Logan and Lady Vanderstyle would not be pleased. Gareth growled. "Fine, but only because there is no more time to argue." He caught her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "And I put the utmost importance on this. You were staying in the hackney coach, Nick. Nowhere else." She nodded, her cheeks rubbing against the palms of his hands. His hands aching to remain on her, to start stripping her clothes off, to dip into all the crevices that made her writhe against him. He instead forced his hands to drop to his sides, and he turned to the door. "You can slip down the way we came. I will pick you up in Lord Samport's mews in an hour." She nodded, and Gareth slipped out the door, his annoyance at a peak. This drunk had better be worth the hassle he was causing. Chapter 12. Nicolina tightened her black cloak around her chest. She wasn't cold in the brisk evening air, but she did feel the distinct need to cover her body as completely as possible before she stepped through the door in front of her. She took a deep breath, and the stench of rot and refuse so prevalent in the area sank into her lungs. Instead of fortifying her, the breath weighed her down, her stomach turning over. For a second she considered turning back to the hack she had waiting for her. Go back to Lord Samport's townhouse. Wait for Gareth. But she had already waited 2 hours and Gareth hadn't shown. 2 hours Norton didn't have, and she knew it. Norton needed her specifically, he had said, to come to the Joker's roost. She stared at the haphazard door cocked crooked in the frame, blood-red paint peeling in long strips from the wood. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. If Norton lost any more coin, he would be indebted to Bornstein forever, if he wasn't already. One hand clutching the wool fabric on the front of her cloak together, she reached out with her other and pushed open the door of the alehouse. A quick glance around the main space of the drinking room, a worn, squalid mess of a place, told her that her brother was not in sight, and that she was not the only woman in the place. A small favour. She was, however, the most fully dressed woman within a quarter mile. A robust waitress with her bosom spilling out the top cut of her apron walked past Nicolina, carrying a tray of mugs. Nicolina jumped to her. "Pardon me, can you tell me if Norton Billington is here?" The woman paused, looking Nicolina up and down, exasperated but not unkind. "Norton?" She shook her head. Then her eyes sparked. "Oh, you mean Skinnies? Are you back with Master Bornstein?" Nicolina looked over the woman's shoulder, searching the wide, dark room. She spotted a doorway with a black curtain hung across it and pointed. "Through there." The woman nodded and then moved to the table nearest her, clanking the mugs from her tray onto the round table. Nicolina started to quickly weave through the rough tables to the back of the room, wishing she had pulled the hood of her cloak up over her head for all the stares that were currently trained on her. Head down, eye contact with no one. That was how one survived St. Giles. Become nothing. A shadow. Tugging the curtain to the side, she slipped through the doorway and immediately bumped into the back of a very large man. He turned, his large paws of hands landing on her shoulders before she could even take a step back to look up at him. "Ox, stop! That's my sister!" Nicolina could hear her brother's slurred words, but couldn't see him past the wide trunk of the man pressing her into the floor. "Ox!" The brute shifted his hands, grabbing her upper arms and lifting her, then turning and setting her down in front of him. His hands left her body, and Nicolina was acutely aware that the beast was now between her and the doorway. She attempted to ignore the chill running down her spine. Her eyes quickly scanned the space. 12 men in all. 6 men, brutes all of them, standing along the walls, one holding her captive. 6 men sat at the round table centering the room. 4 she didn't recognize. Her brother and Bornstein. Him she recognized from when Norton and she had lived in the area. The man spent his days strolling down the street, his overcoat always in an outlandish purple and orange and glittering above the dirty squalor around him, offering a friendly smile to everyone. As friendly as a snake mesmerizing its victim before striking. Yes, she remembered Bornstein well. She pinned her brother with her gaze. "Norton, I have an emergency. We need to leave. I need you." Norton's look skittered from her to Bornstein, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "I can't. Not now, Nick. I almost have it. You came just in time." "Have what?" He collapsed the cards he had in his hand into a neat pile curled under his palm. He threw his free hand up at Bornstein to pause the action at the table. Bornstein nodded at him. Norton scampered from the table, rushing to Nicolina. The thick smell of whiskey came with him, permeating the air around her. "The foundry. I almost have it back. Please, Nick." The foundry? That was what he was working on? Her brother had asked her to show up and claim she needed him in order to get him free of the place. That was what he had said, what he had planned. He had said nothing of the foundry. She glanced at the pot on the table. Paper, coins, and notes were piled high. She looked back at Norton, grabbing his arm and stepping close to him as her voice dropped to a stern whisper. "Whatever you think you have here, Norton, you don't. You will not win. I guarantee it. You need to walk away with me now. We will figure out a way to cover whatever you have lost, but you need to come with me now. I need you." "No, Nick, don't you see? We can have it all back." His hazel eyes were wide, his hand jerking away from her grip and swinging around him. She leaned into him, trying not to breathe in the air of whiskey that burned her eyes, making her gag. "What will this cost you, Norton? Everything?" For a moment, he paused, stilling, and his eyes went sad. But in the next moment he blinked and looked away from her to Bornstein. "Acceptable?" Bornstein bit down on the end of his cigar, chomping as he stared at Norton, and then Nicolina for an elongated moment. Too long. He grabbed the cigar from his teeth. "It will do." Norton jumped, a crazed smile on his face as he ran back to the table and took his seat, tapping his cards on the table. Nicolina rushed after him. "Norton, what do you mean? Will what do?" She only made it 2 steps before the poor hand landed on her shoulder from behind, stopping her so fast she lost her balance. The thug's meaty fingers gripped into her shoulder and started dragging her backward. "What? Let me go, you boar!" she twisted, clawing at the back of the brute's hairy hand. "Norton! Not now, Nick! Norton!" This time she screamed his name. Her brother looked up at her. "Don't worry, Nick. I won't lose this." Her eyes went wide. "Lose what? What are you not going to lose?" His eyes twitched at her, and he turned back to the table. She yanked her body forward, trying to break the clamp on her shoulder. The brute's grip only went tighter, reaching her clavicle, pressing the bones near to snapping. "What are you not telling me, Norton? Norton! Norton!" The brute grabbed her free upper arm and yanked her backward, pulling her to a corner. A rabbit in a trap, she wrenched herself sideways, kicking, scampering, trying to free herself from his hold. She didn't see Bornstein get up from the table and walk toward her until he was standing in front of her, a blur of purple and orange as she twisted about, attempting to escape. A sudden hand around her neck tightened and slammed her into the brute behind her. It stilled her even as she gasped for breath, her panting sending her chest into spasms. Bornstein stared at her, calm, patient. The smile was there, the snake smile. He was squeezing her neck, and he was smiling. At her silence, his smile went wider. "You're part of the pot now, kitty. So stand here like a sweet little pussy and let old Bornstein win ye before I break ye." He leaned in close, his pockmarked nose almost touching her cheek, his sticky breath invading her pores. "You left St. Giles before I could entice ye into me brood. I'll not let ye escape so easily this time." Her eyelids dropped, closing herself off from the bastard, from the brute behind her, from her brother. Closing herself off from the room, from the world. A shadow. She needed to be a shadow. A shadow could survive this. A shadow could survive anything. A shadow. A wisp of wind, disappear.
Chapter 13. The laughter at the table rang in her ears, jeering, cruel. Bornstein released her neck and moved back to the table. She still had a chance. Norton. Her eyes cracked open to find her brother at the table. He hadn't joined in with the laughter. His lips tight, he stared at her, his face sinking to a grey pallor. His look skipped down to the card he had just picked up. It shook. No. She had no chance. Norton didn't have the cards. Her eyes darted about the room. The 5 extra brutes, just as beefy as the one holding her, stood positioned along the edges of the room. Even if she could wiggle free from her captor, she wouldn't escape the room. Her dagger couldn't even help her at this point. Her eyes slid closed once more. She would just have to suffer this. Suffer whatever was about to happen until she could escape. Uncle Felix had taught her how to escape almost any situation, but even he could have never imagined her needing to guard against a room of 11 rabid men. The card game commenced with posturing by the players, barbs thrown to and fro. Laughter. Chuckles that were not happy. Chuckles that shook with fear, with viciousness. She refused to look but could hear all of it. The cards falling, coins clinking into a pot, every second excruciating. How had her brother descended this far into the mad world of these men? "Gentlemen, is it too late to join the game?" Her eyes flew open. No, not Gareth. Not now. Her heart stopped, her head swivelling around the room. The brutes along the walls had all taken a simultaneous step toward the doorway, toward Gareth. Panic clamped onto her chest, stealing her breath. The men at the table instantly fell silent, all eyes going to Gareth. Standing by the black curtain of the door, Gareth's casual countenance offered no indication of why he had suddenly burst into the back room of the Joker's Roost. He looked about the space, seemingly innocently wanting to join the game. He didn't offer the slightest indication he knew anyone in the room until her idiot brother opened his mouth, his drunken eyes swerving to Gareth. "Callison!" Bornstein instantly glanced at Norton and then back to Gareth. He stared at Gareth for a long moment, his fingers rubbing along his chin. His beady eyes swung back to Norton. "You know this man?" Norton squirmed in his chair, avoiding the question, as his scattered look went from Gareth to Nicolina. Bornstein watched it all, his eyes narrowed as his look settled back on Gareth. "I know you." Gareth took another step into the room. Frozen in place, Nicolina's eyes went desperate, her head shaking silently, trying to stop him. No, not another step. Not further into the room. Gareth met Bornstein's stare. "You do? You're the ass that dragged Grayson out of here 2 nights back. He was in the middle of a game." Gareth nodded. "He was in the middle of losing. And you're interfering where ye shouldn't be, boy." Gareth's head tilted to the side, his gaze shifting one by one to every man at the table. "Is the game open?" "No, boy, the game not be open, and ye not be dragging another man from me clutches." Bornstein flicked a finger to one of the brutes by the door, just to the left behind Gareth. "You can leave on your own, or I can have you help from the premises." Nicolina's look seared into Gareth, willing him to leave. Just 3 steps backward and out the door. She could suffer whatever was about to happen just as long as he was out of here. As long as he was safe. Horror crept from her chest into her gut as Gareth's muscles coiled, ready to attack. She knew every inch on his body, knew how every muscle tensed and he was about to strike. No, please, no. But in the next second, Gareth relaxed, offering Bornstein an easy nod. "As you wish. I will leave. But I will be taking my wife with me." "Gareth, no!"
Her words spit out, desperate, as she curled over her belly, her legs going weak. Bornstein perked up, his eyebrow raised as he glanced at Nicolina, and then back to Gareth. "Your wife?" Gareth nodded, not looking in her direction. Bornstein chuckled, leaning back in his chair as he set a hand atop his protruding belly. "This be interesting." His look swung to Norton. "Your sister be a widow, Skinnies?" "He's alive," Norton sputtered. Bornstein nodded, staring at Norton, his beady eyes turning venomous. "He be willing to wager another man's property like that? There be no honour in that, Skinnies." Norton shrank back in his chair, his crumpled cards dropping from his hand onto the table. Bornstein looked to Gareth and flicked his forefinger up, swirling it around at the 6 brutes in the room. "Ye be sure she be worth this?" Gareth didn't blink. "She's my wife. She's worth everything. I will do whatever it takes to get her out of here." "Gareth, don't be stupid! Go! Go now!" Nicolina jumped forward, only to be yanked back into place by the brute behind her, her neck snapping. She squirmed under the pain from the clamps on her shoulders, her eyes not leaving her husband. "Go while you can! Leave!" "Shut her up!" Bornstein snapped. The brute's hand clamped over the bottom half of her face, putrescence touching her lips and souring her tongue. Bornstein's gaze swung back to Gareth. "She be worth that? Everything? Then I was not wrong. She be a worthy addition to me stables." Nonchalant, Gareth took another step into the room, his voice dropping, vibrating with vehemence. "What you don't understand, Bornstein, is that I would fight 1,000 men for her, and I would win." Bornstein chuckled, his lips turning into a sneer. 1,000 men? That I would like to witness. Perhaps we should start with 5. He looked about the table at the other men seated around him, his voice echoing grandeur. "Let it not be said that I don't possess a decent man's honour. And taking another man's wife, well, that is beneath me." He paused, and his look swung to Gareth, his beady eyes pinning him. "So let us turn this wife back into a widow." Bornstein nodded to the brute standing next to Gareth. Hell. The world slowed in front of Nicolina. 5 of the brutes advanced all at once. The one holding her stayed back, clamping her to the front of his body around her waist, his meaty paw still over the lower half of her face, cutting her air. But she could see perfectly. See her world being destroyed once more. And this time in front of her. The thugs collapsed in on Gareth. 2 drawing knives, the glints of silver flashing in the dim light from the lanterns hanging along the walls. Gareth struck first before they could trap him, diving forward against one and slamming him back against a wall. So fast she almost missed it. Gareth knocked the thug's head into the wall, and the man slumped down to the floor unconscious. A second brute grabbed the back of Gareth's coat before he could turn, yanking him into the middle of the floor. His dagger drawn in one quick motion, Gareth sank it into the man's thigh, sending him to the floor before another brute could attack from the front. A knife swung at him from the left, and Gareth jumped back. Another swipe he ducked, deflecting it and swinging back around to cut the brute in the arm. It brought him only a moment of surprise, just enough to dip and send his blade slicing through the tendons behind the thug's knee. The shortest brute growled, lunging, and just as Gareth spun, his blade at the ready, the other one still standing, slammed his fist into Gareth's jaw. It sent Gareth stumbling, and the short brute managed to grab his right wrist and twist it down, slicing the blade through Gareth's thigh. Gareth's dagger dropped, and the short brute snatched his left arm and wedged them both behind Gareth's back before he could gain his balance. The short brute yanked Gareth around to the other standing guard. The fat thug wasted no time, moving forward to land a crushing fist on Gareth's jaw. The beast smiled and stepped back, gaining a step to ram forward and deliver another blow, and then another, and another. The sound of skin smacking into flesh, of bones cracking, filled her ears. The fifth blow sent Gareth to his knees, his eyes barely open, his head rolling senselessly about. One more crack of the fist and Gareth's head snapped backward, blood droplets flying and splattering in all directions. Blood. Gareth's blood. The man holding her twitched with every hit, grunting in satisfaction every time a blow landed on Gareth. Enjoying it. Actually enjoying her husband getting pummeled. That spiked more fury than Nicolina could control. She had already lost Gareth once, and watching him die was something she couldn't bear to witness, not in front of her, not if she could help it. And then she saw. Gareth's right eye opened to her, and the slightest smile twitched on his bloodied lips. He wasn't done. Not by far. Her husband was, in fact, just getting started. But he could use a touch of help. A blade within his immediate vicinity, for starters, and by the crook of his eyebrow at her, he was wondering where his wife was on that front. They would be getting out of there together. They always had been stronger united. Inhaling a silent breath to herself, she assessed the blades on her body. Travelling into St. Giles without them would have been madness, and she had hoped to keep the 3 daggers strapped on her body hidden until she had only one captor to escape instead of a room full of them. But Gareth needed her steel now, and she would deliver. The brute holding her captive had his attention fully on the fight. It was his downfall, for she managed to slip her right hand under her cloak and wrap her fingers around the handle of the dagger along her ribcage without him noticing. The blade flashing and impaling the back of his hand over her face was the brute's first and only warning that she was not to meekly watch her husband get beaten. The brute screamed, throwing Nicolina away from him. His thrust of her so vicious, her knife tore through the flesh on the back of his hand along the way. His instant wail gave evidence of the pain. Perfect. And he had thrown her directly toward her husband. She landed within 2 steps of Gareth. Instinct guiding her, she leapt in between Gareth and the man lifting his fist for another blow, the tip of her blade instantly pressing into the soft divot of his neck. Pressing. Drawing blood. She shifted the dagger so the length of the blade was along his neck, the tip still digging into his skin. He couldn't move, sideways or backward, without the blade severing his throat. The man stilled, his hands slowly lifting up on either side of him. "This stops! Now!" She shouted the words in Bornstein's direction, her eyes not leaving the thug in front of her. Slowly, to not draw attention, her left hand slipped behind her, and her fingers shuffled the fabric of her dark skirt upward, giving Gareth direct access to the dagger strapped to her calf the moment he found his way to free a hand. "My husband leaves. He walks away, and I will stay. Norton is yours, I am yours, but my husband leaves this place." Bornstein chuckled, grabbing the cigar from his mouth and pointing it at her. "I didn't expect this out of ye, Kitty." Guffaws and snorts erupted from the table. "Nick." Her name a gargled sound. Gareth could only wrench out the one word behind her. Her words alarmed her husband as they should, but she had no intention of staying in that hellhole, and the lie would buy her time. She hoped. She ignored Gareth, her eyes trained on the man in front of her. The brute was waiting for her attention to divert, for her to lessen the point of the dagger on his neck. Bornstein's chair creaked as he leaned back further in it. "You seem to be mistaken on the worth of life for you, Kitty. You think I'd be worried on losing one man?" Silence fell on the room. No more chuckles, no more screams, no more jeering. Just silence. Bornstein was waiting her out. She had all the patience in the world. She had the man in front of her a twitch away from death, and if the second thug holding Gareth released him to attack her, her husband would have the dagger from her calf in his hand within a second. With her steel, Gareth would turn deadly, no longer one to spare life where he could. "How do you think this ends, Kitty?" Bornstein's voice went irate. "He got his throat, and who do you think is behind him? There be 4 more men at this table lined up to get to ye after he drops. And then all my men your weak husband didn't fully fell. And if one of them gets ye, Kitty, well, I now be inclined to let him have ye to do whatever he wants to ye. And these men don't know when to stop, Kitty. Don't have control." The tip of her dagger twisted, digging harder into the brute's neck. "He be out of options, Kitty." Bornstein stuffed the cigar into the side of his mouth. "You're best to set down the dagger and be under my generosity again." Silence. Only silence. "She has one last option." The deep voice filled the room from behind her. So brutally fierce the tone alone sent a shiver through her gut. But she didn't dare turn around to the voice. Didn't dare take her eyes off the brute in front of her. Footsteps. Footsteps filling into the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Too many to count. Bornstein sat up, grabbing the cigar from his mouth as he stood, his face beginning to bluster at whatever was happening by the doorway. The footsteps stopped shuffling along the floor. What the hell was happening behind her? "Her last option is us, Bornstein. She leaves with us. Callison leaves with us. Her brother leaves with us." A strained, forced chuckle left Bornstein's lips. "Ye think I'm going to cede to ye and a bunch of cripples?" "And also the most deadly soldiers the Crown has ever produced." The man speaking behind her stepped forward, aligning himself next to Nicolina's left side. Logan Lippenstein, the man that had untied her in the stables of the Revelry's Tempest. Logan's right hand lifted, and he slipped his hand along the back of hers, his grip overtaking hers on her dagger. He didn't pull her hand away, only solidified her pointed command of the brute. His attention stayed on Bornstein. "Would you truly like to take a go at us? How many men do you want to lose to pride, Bornstein?" Bornstein's face twisted, murderous, as red splotches dotted his forehead. He glanced about at the men sitting around the table. It took him a long moment to look back to Logan, and then his eyes shifted to the man holding Gareth. "Let 'em go, Victor." A grunt reached her ears, and Gareth was pushed forward, brushing into the back of her skirts. His hands instant on her leg. The sheath strapped to her calf lightened as he drew the dagger. Yet she still couldn't look away, couldn't take her eyes off the brute she held at knife point in front of her. Gareth heaved a breath, his boots clunking along the floor as he staggered to his feet. He stepped forward, flanking her right side, and his left arm stretched out in front of her stomach. A barrier. "Step back, Nick." His words came out raw. Relief flooded her. Gareth was upright, breathing, talking, strong as ever. She couldn't move, not until Logan guided her hand, clutching the dagger down and away from the brute's neck before releasing her hand. She shuffled a step backward and glanced over her shoulder. Shock vibrated through her body. A row of men 10 wide had aligned against the wall behind her, shoulder to shoulder, all tall and ferociously strong. Each one of their jaws was set to battle, pistols or steel held ready across the line. The most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Gareth coughed, bending over as he spit blood on the floor. Her head whipped back around to him. It took a second before he pulled himself up straight from the cough racking his body, and he skewered Bornstein with his one eye that wasn't swollen shut. "Norton's dead. Paid. Grayson's dead. Paid." Bornstein cawed, spittle flying as his arm swung wide. "This clears nothing." Logan took a step forward and Bornstein instantly stilled. "We are leaving you and your men alive, Bornstein. That is payment enough." Bornstein's lips snarled, and he fought Logan's declaration in silence for a long second before nodding. Logan inclined his head to Bornstein and then turned back to his men. With the slightest finger twitch as command, two of the men in front of the doorway parted, opening a path out. The world blurred in front of Nicolina's eyes, a hand on her back ushering her out of the room, Gareth's warm body next to hers, his arms slung behind her waist and steering her to the door. Norton scrambling to follow them out. The dark din of the drinking room. Murmurs. The crooked door to the street bobbing in and out of focus in front of her. It wasn't until she and Gareth and Norton were out on the street that Logan's men filed out behind them. Logan fell in step beside Gareth. Gareth looked to Logan as his arm tightened around Nicolina's back. "You should have let me kill the man, or at least one of his brutes." Logan's look stayed forward, his eyes scanning the usual St. Giles dead-of-night activity ahead of them on the street. Drunks, prostitutes, and vagrants filling the night, moving in and out of shadows. He shook his head. "It isn't the right time to start a war, Callison. But it will be eventually," Gareth asked. Logan shrugged in reply. A few steps passed and he pointed to a line of black carriages waiting to deliver the lot of them back to the West End. Nicolina craned her neck to look behind them as Gareth kept her feet moving along the cobblestones. Curved in a half-circle behind them, Logan's men walked along the street, one of the worst in London, as if they owned the night. A formidable force no man in the area would dare counter. If there was a war, she had no doubt who the victor would be. Chapter 14. Nicolina stared at the bowl, the rippling water in it tinged red. Red from blood, her husband's blood. A shiver skipped across her back. How very close she had come to losing him again. Reaching into the bowl, she swished the cloth and pulled it from the bowl, wringing the excess water from it as her head shook. "I just don't understand how Norton could do that to me." "Sometimes people disappoint, Nick. Sometimes their reasons are sound. Sometimes they're not." Gareth sighed. "And sometimes they're just plain selfish. No apologies, no accounting for their actions. They are just selfish." Her wrists dropped, landing on the lip of the bowl. "But Norton is my brother." "Being your brother does not make him a good person, Nick." Gareth's voice was heavy, tired and rightfully so. "Norton has always been of that character, ever since we were all young. There is no changing him. Until he stumbles upon his own reckoning, you waste your energy on having expectations for him." Nicolina knew what Gareth said to be truth, but she couldn't give up on hope for her brother, even after what he did to her in the Joker's Roost, especially because of what he did to her there. Norton had descended into a very dark place, and she hoped it scared the devil out of him. "You didn't wait for me, Nick." She glanced over her shoulder at him. "You said an hour, Gareth. I did wait. I waited 2 hours, even though I didn't think Norton had that extra time to spare." She looked back to the bowl, the expanding rings and the bloodied water now still. "And I thought I was helping him, an excuse for him to escape that rat's nest. I had no idea what he intended, that he thought he could gamble me away like I was nothing more than a worn shilling." "I shouldn't have been late, Nick." Gareth's voice had dipped low. "I was dealing with that belligerent drunk when I should have been by your side." She waved her hand over her shoulder at him. "It is done." It was done, and she had finally seen what she needed to see in her brother, seen what she had needed to in Gareth. She shook the twisted cloth over the bowl and turned around to her husband. He sat on the plain bed in his sparse room, shirtless but with trousers still on. His brown eyes had slightly narrowed at her, watching her closely. Logan had delivered them to the simple, nondescript townhouse 3 streets away from the revelry's tempest that Gareth shared with several of the other guards. Aside from the bed, a small chest of drawers with a pitcher and water basin sitting atop, and a single wing-back chair by the fireplace were the only items that sat within the cavernous space. Meant to be an elegant chamber for a prosperous man, the room's original purpose was decidedly not being utilised. Her eyes squinted in the low light from the fireplace, searching Gareth's face for any dried blood she had missed. Other than the 3 cuts along his cheek, and his eye still swollen half shut, nothing else marred his face. She pointed to his lap. "Off with your trousers. I need to look at the wound on your leg as well." She walked over to him, stopping in front of him. Gareth made no motion to loosen his trousers. Instead, he stared up at her, his brown eyes intense. "Nick." "What?" "Off with your trousers." She moved down to kneel on both knees before him and set the wet cloth on the wooden floorboards before reaching for his left boot to pull off. His hand clamped down on her shoulder as he wedged his boot from her grip. "Nick, you cannot do that." "I cannot remove your boots." Her hands went on her hips. "Need I remind you I've pulled them free hundreds of times?" "Not like this, you haven't." Her head tilted slightly forward, her left eyebrow lifting. "What are you speaking of, Gareth?" He exhaled as he looked downward, his gaze centering on his lap. "This is the other thing that happened during the war that you need to know of, Nick. I have not had a moment to explain." "Explain what?" "My foot. It is not whole." She dropped backward onto her heels, her arms falling to her sides. "What do you mean, not whole?" He cleared his throat as his fingers ran through his hair. His brown eyes lifted to her. "As in gone." "Gone?" "Amputated. My left foot was amputated, Nick. A round shot hit it. It was so damaged, the blood unstoppable, so they took it." She gasped, her hand jerking forward to clutch his right knee. She started to sway, her head going light as she looked up at him. Her imagination overtook her. What had happened? How it had happened? She forced the wretched question from her mind onto her tongue. "Gareth, they sawed off your foot." "They did, Nick." The line of his jaw set hard, not a twitch along his face. He was steeling himself against her reaction. "You did not think to tell me of this. The pain." She gulped back a gasp. "The pain you must have endured. And you did not tell me? But I asked. I inquired as to your limp." "There's not been time, Nick. I was set to tell you, but then—" He looked away from her, his gaze settling on the fire. "I understand if you do not want a cripple for a husband, Nick." She sprung up from her heels onto her knees, her hand flying through the air before she could stop it. Not that she wanted to stop it. Her hand struck his cheek, the smack of flesh hitting flesh, not nearly satisfying the surge of anger that spiked in her body for the idiocy she had to knock out of him. His look flew to her, his own rage bubbling. She cut him off before he could utter a sound. "If you ever speak such blasphemy to me again, Gareth, I truly will leave you." She moved forward, pushing herself in between his knees so she could grab both sides of his face, her voice vehement. "The worst thing I ever lived through was losing you, and I couldn't bloody well care less if you came back to me with no legs, much less minus a foot." "And I failed you on that accord as well." "Coming back to me?" Her head shook. "I don't care if I had to find you, Gareth. The point is that once I did, you came back to me. In here." She dragged his face downward and set her lips on his forehead. "In here." Her right hand slipped down from his face to land on his heart. His head dropped forward, his eyes avoiding her. For the longest moment he sat still, silent. He didn't believe her. Her fingers curled on his bare chest, wanting to beat him, to rail at him, to force him to see what was right before him. Instead, her words manifested in the slightest whisper. Gareth, your foot, Pippin. Above all of it, you are all I have ever wanted. A phantom foot is not going to change that. What you believe are your failures does not change that. She stopped, having to swallow away the lump tearing at her throat. For all that you had convinced yourself you did not deserve me, you still came back to me, against my anger, against your own will. And I know how determined your will is. Her left hand along his jaw tightened to his face. You are what I want, what I need. I need my husband, and the rest can fall away. His pinky twitched, and slowly his left hand lifted, and he set his palm along the back of her hand on his chest. His head lifted, his brown eyes meeting hers. You have me, Nick. You always have. Do not doubt it. She exhaled, her breathless laugh, relieved. I don't. Her hand along his face slipped around to the back of his neck, and he leaned forward, kissing her gently, for his lower lip was still swollen. But she could feel the passion simmering beneath the light touch, passion that had never wavered. He pulled back slightly, a smile carving into his face, a smile she hadn't seen in years, the smile she had fallen in love with long ago, the smile that had set upon his face on the day they were married. Easy, adoring, without the weight of the world bearing down upon him. Her hand on his neck slid forward, her thumb tracing the lower curve of his lip as she looked at him in awe. He was back. Her husband was back. Damaged, battle-weary, haunted, but hers again. Nick, what I have not told you, there is more. A chuckle escaped his lips. This is a good thing. It is about the foundry. Her forehead wrinkled. Uncle Felix's foundry. Bornstein owns it. That was what Norton was convinced he could win for that pot. That was what he was playing for. Gareth shook his head. He was playing for a lie. Lippenstein purchased the foundry days ago. He what? Logan owns it now, and he wants me to run it. No more Revelry's Tempest. It was why I needed to wrangle the drunk Grayson. He's to be my replacement on the guard. Her eyes flew wide. Gareth, but that was what you always had planned upon, taking over the foundry. What Uncle Felix had planned for you. He knew Norton would never be able to handle it. Gareth nodded. I scarcely believe it. Nor I. But it is real. Her head tilted to the side. But how did you know this of Mr. Lippenstein? That he had these means? Gareth shrugged. For all that the man is forthright, is loyal beyond all sanity, and has done for all his guards of the Revelry's Tempest. He is a mystery to me. He doesn't ask questions of us, and we don't ask questions of him. All of us guards served with him in some capacity on the continent, and he has found all of us, picked or dragged us out of the squalor we were living in. And I shall thank him properly next time I see him. Nicolina looked down to Gareth's lap. The dark crusted fabric of his trousers sat dried with blood. But before any of that, I need to get to this last wound of yours. She looked up at him. And that means your trousers are gone. Your boots are gone. He stilled. Are you ready for that? She looked up at him, a smile sweet and wicked and loving curling her lips. Dear husband of mine, I am ready for anything. Never doubt it. His smile reflected hers. I never shall. He stopped her left hand as she reached for his boot and pulled it upward. His fingers quick, he dragged off the ribbon-wrapped ring on her pinky. Spinning the ring in fingers, he found the end of the black ribbon and pinched at the fabric, untying it. Strip by strip, the black ribbon fell from the metal, revealing the rose-gold ring her Uncle Felix had helped Gareth craft long ago. Strung together with the finest etchings, stones of topaz that matched her eye colour lined the ring, catching flickers of light from the fireplace. He held the ring up in between them. I was hoping this was under that ribbon. Staring at the ring, she exhaled relief, not even realizing how the last year of concealing her ring had weighed upon her. How very long it had been since she had hidden it away, hidden her heart away. Let us get this on the correct finger, shall we? Her left hand trembling, she lifted it up to him as her heart swelled in her chest. A smile playing on his swollen lips, he slipped it onto her ring finger. He was home. Truly home. He was hers once more, and she was his. Epilogue. At Gareth's touch on her shoulder, Nicolina excused herself from the group of women, all wives and daughters of the artisans. They had gathered in the large main workshop, both the workers and their families, to celebrate the reopening of Uncle Felix's foundry. Gareth had managed to find and bring back all but 2 of the workers that had left when Bornstein took over. Nicolina looked to her husband as she turned. He is here. He is, and as uncomfortable as I have ever seen him. A twinkle of levity sparked in Gareth's eyes. He is accustomed to controlling events and people, not actually partaking in the revelry. Exactly. So we must catch him before he disappears on us. She set her fingers along Gareth's upper arm. Do you have it? Where is he? Both by the main office. I think he means to slip into it and then out the back door. Nicolina eyed the room, finally catching sight of Logan sipping from a tankard of ale as he edged closer to the doorway of the office. The usual handsome lines of his face were lined with discomfort. Gareth grabbed her hand, tugging her behind him as he weaved through the throng of people, dodging slaps to his shoulders and men attempting to draw him into conversation. They reached Logan just as his right foot slipped through the doorway of the office. Gareth caught his arm. He cannot disappear on us just yet, my friend. Logan looked over his shoulder, his eyes going from Gareth to Nicolina. He sighed, resignation taking over his gaze as he realized he was trapped, at least for the moment. I came, per your request, Logan said, and now I must be moving along. 5 minutes at this party does not constitute participation, Logan. Nicolina couldn't keep the smirk from her face as she teased him. You would be surprised at how many unwed women are in this room. I can introduce you about if you would like. A priceless cringe flashed across his eyes. Gareth laughed, ushering Logan into the office. Don't mind my wife. She is set on torturing you a pinch more than what these last 5 minutes have done. Logan's look settled on Nicolina, and the scold creasing the corners of his eyes slipped into wry amusement. If I wasn't afraid of your husband, I would have you a hide, imp. Then it is a good thing I chose well in a husband. Nicolina closed the door to the office. Gareth picked up a tall, skinny bundle of cloth from beside the door and turned to Logan. We saw you attempting an exit, but before you leave, we wanted to give you something. Logan's head angled to the side, his look questioning. Balanced long atop both of his hands, Gareth held the long bundle up to Logan. This. Logan looked at the dark cloth, yet made no motion for it. Gareth lifted it a little higher, and Logan stepped forward, hesitantly taking the bundle. Logan turned, setting the cloth down on the nearby desk, and then unwrapping the folds of fabric. Logan's fingers paused, gripping the cloth as he revealed the gift inside. A gleaming sword reflected shards of light from the wall sconces. It is the first creation of the reopened foundry, Gareth said. It is yours. Logan's fingers slowly set the dark cloth down, his hand slipping along the hilt of the sword. The grip was smooth, an elegant line of onyx inlaid with gold. From the ruby-embedded quillin, The golden knuckle guard swooped away in 3 precise arcs, balanced equally between delicacy and strength. "This is remarkable. Unparalleled." Logan lifted the blade and set it out directly from his nose, eyeing the straight length of it. A low whistle escaped his lips. "That is the bar we set." Gareth nodded to the blade. "Every piece that comes from our foundry will meet this level. Steel that will not fail the men that possess it." Logan held the sword out to Gareth. "I cannot accept it." "You can and you will. I will craft more. A lifetime of them. And in the first set, 1 for each of your men." Gareth pointed at the blade. "But this one is yours, and I will not accept your refusal of it. You never know when you will need it." Logan's eyes pinned Gareth. A silent look of gratitude, of respect, passed between the 2 men. Logan offered one nod and then turned to Nicolina. He glanced back to Gareth. "Did you ever tell her?" Gareth stilled, shaking his head. Nicolina's gaze flickered between the 2 men. "Tell me what?" Logan turned fully to Nicolina. "Your husband is a legend, Logan." "No." Logan lifted the sword as he looked at Gareth. "You forced this upon me. I force this upon you. She has a right to know as your wife. A right to take pride." Gareth sighed. It was all the permission Logan needed. Logan looked at Nicolina. "You need to know what your husband did on the continent during the war." Her look went to Gareth and then drifted slowly back to Logan. "What?" "Your husband became a legend. It was in a battle on a field where we were backed against a river by Boney's forces. There was no easy escape. 1 lone stone bridge. Our artillery had failed. It was weak metal blown, for it could not withstand the pressures of the gunpowder. It left our men near to defenseless. But your husband, he carried 11 men off that battlefield in the midst of the carnage, long after his own rifle and steel had failed him. More metal that was brittle and broken." Logan looked at Gareth. "He was mad to do so, but he kept running into the field long after sanity should not have allowed it. 8 of those men lived because of him." Her eyes going wide, Nicolina's gaze travelled to her husband. Logan looked to Nicolina. "But he never stopped. Not until that shot took his foot. Only then did he cease." Logan lifted his hand to stop Gareth's interruption, shaking his head at his friend. "His actions alone that day inspired feats of courage that still reverberate through the army. He hates the word legend." "I do. But that is what he became that day." Logan inclined his head to Nicolina. "Gareth may be embarrassed by the sentiment, but it is something you should know, both for you and for his child." Logan's forehead dipped down in deference to Nicolina's slightly protruding stomach. "Thank you, Logan." Nicolina smiled, threading her hand along her husband's arm. "Gareth has always been a legend in my mind, so this does not surprise me, but it does please me. I will leave you to your gathering." Logan looked to Gareth. "Thank you. It is an honor, and with masterpieces such as this," he lifted the sword, "I predict the foundry will be profitable within 6 months. With luck." "You don't need luck, my friend." Logan tilted his head to them. "You have your wife." He escaped out the rear door of the office. Nicolina turned to Gareth and wrapped her arms around his sides, looking up at him. "I am glad he told me that." "It is not something I wished for you to have to imagine." "No, but it was real. It happened. And Logan was right. It is something our child should eventually know about his or her father. Something to take pride in, when there has not been much to take pride in." "Nonsense," she grinned, shrugging her shoulders. "A rogue? A legend? Who knew they were the same thing?" He laughed and wrapped his arms fully around her. Your husband, that is all I ever truly aspired to.
And you are legendary at that as well. She smiled, squeezing his waist as he chuckled. She motioned back to the main floor of the foundry with her head.
Onward? Onward, my wife.
This has been To Capture a Rogue, Logan's Legends, a Revelry's Tempest novel. Written by K.J. Jackson. Narrated by Anais Inara Chase. Copyright 2018 by K.J. Jackson. If you would like more hold-your-breath historical romance from K.J. Jackson, find it at kjjackson.com.